and welcome to Kurt Vonneguys, the podcast dedicated to the life and works and ongoing things of Kurt Vonnegut, because he's the greatest author of all time. My name is Alex Schmidt, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Michael Swaim.
Aha! I caught you! By bursting into this room. But before I get to that, let's record a podcast episode.
Have you ever seen, there's a comedy pilot that David Lynch did called On the Air?
No.
It's nuts, but there's one like recurring joke where a guy bursts into a room and says, "Aha, I've caught you with another man." And like it's always
I thought I reminded you because I did the David Lynch voice. Aha! Today on YouTube, we're gonna make a baked zucchini squash. He does like...
Is our guest David Lynch?
Oh man, his YouTube channel is amazing because he'll just like make a casserole and it's still somehow creepy.
Oh, yeah, it would be. Yeah.
Or like he used to do the David Lynch weather report where he would just upload, well, where I am, it's cloudy today.
Oh, that's so weird.
Amazing. Yeah.
He's the best.
He's the best.
This is an episode about Kurt Vonnegut, the playwright. Mm-hmm. How about that? Oh, yes. You thought he was a novelist. Here he goes in a whole nother medium and format, and isn't that amazing?
Methinks the play is the thing. We're in to do some Vonneguting. Hey, let me ask you. Do you spell playwright like you write a play, or like you are a wheelwright or a Wainwright?
The second one, like a craftsman.
Right? Because it's classier.
Yeah. It feels very, right, like they're building it in shirt sleeves.
Oh,
and
good.
Like,
okay, we won't have to argue about that.
Yeah.
We agree about everything except the pronunciation of particular words. That's good to know.
Yeah. Also, I pronounce it pleru.
You mangled that so much I forgot what we're discussing. Pleru? Oh, yeah, playwriting. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, and this episode is about mainly Happy Birthday, Wanda, June, which is a play Kurt wrote in 1970, and then also two shorter plays called Fortitude and The Very First Christmas Morning. But let's get into all of them with a segment called Plot Time.
Tickety-tock, it's the time of the clock, it's the reading the plot time.
Yeah.
No.
Sorry, I was flipping docs on my computer, and it came off as if I was like very not into that segment.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, we practiced the thirds and the fifths. I thought you were going to come in with the harmonies, but if you're just going to leave me out there to dry, that's your prerogative, man.
So I'm
just the co-host, dude. Yeah.
Anyway, now that I've dropped all of the balls, let's get into the plays.
Plot time Wanda June or plot time all at once? All three. What order do you want to do this in?
Like we're just unstuck in time?
Well, we could go from the biggest, most complex one down to the one that doesn't matter.
Yeah,
or
I think let's do that.
Okay,
let's start with Wanda June. It's also probably the one well-known play by Kurt Vonnegut, if there is one. It initially started out as a shorter and different play he wrote called Penelope in 1960, and then it was expanded after he was, a better known writer, and he expanded it and rewrote it in 1970 as Happy Birthday, Wanda June, and then it was performed off Broadway and even on Broadway. What a thing!
Wow, The Great White Way. And I'll say my edition, very telling. If you haven't read it and don't know the themes of the book, the cover is just pure black with Satan's pitchfork reaching up from the underworld. That's the cover.
And like poking the title.
Tormenting it. Tormenting Wanda.
Like it's a cartoon butt, like just pitchfork straight into it.
Yeah, and that's the play. Basically, the devil punishes this little girl for her sins for all eternity. Now, and I thought it was interesting, actually, he said the original was called Penelope because it was originally based on the idea of when he read the Odyssey as a young man, he just found it unfathomably cruel, especially to Penelope. And that so resonated with me, made me so happy. Because when I read the Odyssey in high school, do you remember the part where they sacrifice a brood of snow white sows? It's like a throwaway line in the book because that's what you did at that time in that culture. Was like, oh, and they found a white sow and they slit her throat and all over kids' throats. And then Poseidon brought the winds and then they could go to the next island. So I just wrote an epic poem from the point of view of those sows who were on their own odyssey to get home to their family. And then guys come and gather them up and kill them.
Oh, that's amazing.
So I was like, wow, I did the exact same thought where it's just like looking at an ancient culture and all you come away with is, man, history was mean. It was hard to live in like 1000 AD. That was a tough time.
Yeah, I'm weird. It's my first consumption of the Odyssey was there was a TV miniseries starring Armand Assante in the 1990s. And I thought it was just like a mean show. because I was a kid and I was
Because you
just
imagine
like,
modern writers being
okay.
like, yeah, he just kills them all.
right.
Screws their girlfriends. Then there's this woman witch. He screws her and he kills her.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and there'd be whole episodes because it's broken up where it'd just be, oh, let's check in on Penelope. Yep, she's still very sad at a loom.
Very sad.
Anyway, see you next week.
Endlessly loyal to this dude who she
Right.
like saw once and then never saw for 20 years.
Yeah, yeah. And then I got to a class where we read the thing, and I was like, oh, it's the source. Yeah, it's not a...
Yeah,
like,
and of course it's incredible for all the blah blah reasons. Insight into the
all right.
historic mind, amazing. Well, the rhymes are good. There's great lyricality in it, and why are we talking about the Odyssey for so long? Oh, right, because it's based on it.
yeah, that's fair. I think
It's
so, yeah.
based on that and a combination of, he says, basically his interpretation of Ernest Hemingway.
So this is also, because Kurt is such a novelist where his intros and prefaces and so on are crucial, I feel like it would be hard to watch this play not getting to read the intro he does for our copies of it, where you really learn a lot about what it means and what he's going for, and it's really key. But he talks about it in that he and his wife at the time, Jane, did a great books course on Cape Cod in the 1950s about the Odyssey. He was like, this is a horrible story toward Penelope. And then he just kind of worked from there, and he tried to work it out. And then also he works in how he feels about Ernest Hemingway's life. And then in between writing the first version, Penelope, and this version, Happy Birthday, Wanda June, Hemingway commits suicide. So then that impacts the play too.
But just the concept that, and I think it is very insightful, of Hemingway, he's not like going into the details of the real man Hemingway, who knows about the intricacies of his complex tragic psychology, but meaning the type of manly man that Hemingway romanticized and sort of embodied, and a lot of people alive at the time thought, God, he's the James Bond of our era. You know, that's the coolest way to be a man, is to be like Hemingway-esque and piss in the fireplace and have a big beard and shit. And as you'd expect, Kurt Vonnegut's, he's Adam Scott if Hemingway is Nick Offerman. So he's like, I don't like that. I don't like going out and just slaughtering animals and thinking it gives you big balls. Fuck that. So
I never even connected as Parks and Rec, but that's great.
But Hemingway as Odysseus is great. The guy that's going to go out and hunt and come back and hope his wife is still waiting. And if there's other suitors, he'll just kill them. That'll take care of that.
Right, which is especially, it just really doesn't translate to our era at all.
Well,
like,
yeah,
epic
you can't do
poem
that.
For 1,000,
I would have loved Castaway if Act 3 was Tom Hanks just goes John Wick on anyone that ever looked at his wife while he was gone.
Just tracking down delivery men who came by while he was gone. And
I was just delivering her a package. I just took over your route. Oh, I know what you mean by that. Bam, 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 bam. Most likable man in Hollywood, Tom Hanks.
And also, like he's an action duo with the volleyball still, so he's like, throw me the gun, and the volleyball's just sitting there in the corner. You know,
they run out of bullets, and Wilson's like, you know what you have to do. He just hurls Wilson across the room, bounces off the heads of 8 goons, and they all collapse. Reservoir Dogs style. That's your movie.
Yeah.
And that's what Wanda June's about. No, let's get into it.
Yeah. I guess it's sort of a blurb, but there's a quote from the intro where he says that the part of Hemingway he detested was, quote, the slayer of nearly extinct animals, which meant him no harm. So it's like a masculinity thing, but also just the straight up death and murder involved in it, which keeps coming up.
Yeah, and I don't think it was like anything about like Hemingway's overrated as a writer or his writing sucks or it's actually a smear job of Hemingway the man. It's just the things he represented at the time.
Yeah.
And
so he's very particular about it, and he really goes after it. Yeah. And so the play opens with 4 of the characters all standing and speaking directly to the audience, which is very just direct and really plays to me like most of Kurt's books do, where like instead of having a narrator just tell you what it's about and exactly who everyone is, since it's a play, the characters just do that. They just walk out on stage and tell you everything.
Yeah, and actually, Very First Christmas Morning does the same thing. It has a bit of a better excuse because it's for small children.
Right.
But I have rarely seen a play, I think, other than like Our Town is the only one, or maybe Bye Bye Birdie, where the characters come out and go, hello, my name is Penelope. I'm in a bad marriage. This is my child, Paul. Paul, say hi to the nice people. I'm Paul. I'm the son character.
I like that everyone is Richard III. Everyone is sort of like...
No, those were the actors as themselves. Then, of course, they don their character voices, which are much more normal.
Right. I'm Penelope. Yeah. It's mainly focused around Penelope directly talking to the audience, and she tells you right away this is a simple-minded play about men who enjoy killing and those who don't. Later on, she says, hey, this is a tragedy. When it's done, my face will be as white as the snows of Kilimanjaro. So, boom, Hemingway reference right away. Boom, now we know
Africa
that
connection.
too.
And then Harold himself, the Hemingway stand-in, the patriarch, absent patriarch, comes in and says, yeah, I'm the guy she's talking about. I've killed many hundreds of men and thousands of animals. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
Next.
And it sets up the two sources right away. You've got Harold is Hemingway right away, and then overall you've got literally named Penelope Ryan. His wife is waiting for him. He's presumed dead because he and his friend Colonel Looseleaf Harper have been lost in Africa lost in the Amazon looking for diamonds for so long. Yep. And then she has a son, Paul. And
Paul Ryan.
Right, who coincidentally is named Paul Ryan. And
plays himself in this off-Broadway production.
It's very busy. And so she and her son Paul live in New York, and she has two suitors around all the time. One is named Herb Shuttle. He is a vacuum cleaner salesman and loves weightlifting, and also worships the idea of Harold Ryan. He's blown away by the guy, thinks he's the greatest hunter. And
also, can I just say the name Herb is to vacuum cleaner salesman as Jeeves is to butler. You're locked in.
Yeah. Right. At birth, it's well, how do I sell vacuums?
Yeah.
And then the other suitor is named Dr. Norbert Woodley, which also locked in. Set. And he is a pacifist and constantly giving people peace signs. And
they represent the Odyssean suitors. There's only two instead of a line out the house. Yeah. And they're Telemachus. Do you say Telemachus or Telemachus?
Oh, Telemachus, I think.
Great. Good. Yeah. We're agreed. Their Telemachus is Paul, obviously. Yeah. And much like in the Odyssey, he's grown up with this outsized, fantastical vision of his dad. The apartment is completely covered in animal skins to the point where the doorbells make animal noises when you press them. Yeah. Which obviously is not Penelope's style and she hates it. And he's been gone for a decade. Right. Or 8 years or something. 11 years? I don't remember. But the point is, he has such a strong, powerful presence. Nothing in the house has been allowed to be changed at all. And his son, worships him as a god in his absence, a god that he barely remembers. But just any time his mom says anything that's even a human failing, he yelled at me at that picnic or whatever, the son will flip out and be like, Harold Ryan is the greatest man to ever. Yeah. Great. Also, Andrew Ryan being the Ayn Randian antagonist in the BioShock games.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. There's nothing there.
So many Ryans.
Yeah.
So strange.
Popular name.
Well, I really think this play does a good job of blowing out that thing that is in the Odyssey where it's so cruel that when the husband is gone forever, also his son is cheerleading him to a wife who is already putting up with enough shit,
Although I do understand, it's funny, from the time of the Odyssey, if you're the intended audience, which is a land-owning dude who's rich enough to own a book and doesn't, at this time in culture, probably, unless you happen to be really progressive in your mind, think women or children are as important as you. Obviously, you're looking at it from Odysseus' point of view and being how sad would it be after you killed 10 monsters to get to your wife if there were other guys hovering around? Yeah. And it's well, it would be even worse for her, but you don't think about that if you're an ancient Greek, imbibing the Odyssey. That's not the point.
Right, and financially, business, the whole audience is men. So you just write towards
so you're
that would be bullshit.
That would be bullshit. Yeah. Do you know what I did to get back here? Which will come up. That's Harold's opinion as well.
Right.
When he comes back, is you now owe me the world because I was suffering for 11 years while I was gone. Well, okay, but life goes on. That's not her fault. She doesn't owe you anything.
Right. Well, and they also set up that when this is happening, it's 3 months from the time when legally Harold will be dead. He'll be legally declared dead, and officially she'll inherit a widow.
His giant estate.
Right.
Oh, also, I think it's important to point out that they establish real quick that he's rich through inheritance.
Yes.
So he's the kind of masculine playboy who does all those things that appear rugged, but they're also things only the very wealthy can even do, which is kind of an unmasculine thing about him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like he's, Al Swearingen in Deadwood, who's like, I goddamn cut all the switches and cleared the land and built this town. He's like, I'm manly because I paid to go in a helicopter and shoot at things. And the helicopter crashed and I got captured, but still, you're only there because you're rich. Like, it's an interesting dichotomy.
Yeah, at one point he just says, yeah, my parents died and they left me a brewery and a baseball team.
And other things.
Other
and
stuff.
some other things.
You don't even totally know? Like,
yeah, later when Penelope's going to leave him, he tells her, don't worry, you're not going to starve. My last wife got the baseball team. You'll probably get the brewery. I have some other things. Everyone will be fine. It's clearly someone who's lived a life of, money's not even a problem to think about. Who cares?
Yeah.
Because he's just always had it.
Which makes you bulletproof in a way that kind of undercuts the, what a brave.
That's funny, given that at the end he tries to shoot himself in the head and fails. Bulletproof!
Whoops.
Oh, if you don't know, spoiler alerts are coming at you. You shouldn't be listening at this point, I'd say.
Oh, I just meant my choice of phrasing. Also, he's Hemingway, and, these things happen. So we...
Oh, shit! I'm dumb as hell. I never even realized he shoots himself in the head like Hemingway did. Like, obviously, I know Hemingway died that way. I know this kid, but I separated them enough that I didn't like, man, that would have been really edgy to stage right after Hemingway really killed himself with a shot to the head. That is crazy.
Yeah.
Did they take the play down like when that happened?
So the way the timeline works, he put up Penelope on Cape Cod. It ran for a week at a theater called the Orleans Arena Theater, and then that was it.
Yeah.
And that was in 1960. In 1961, Ernest Hemingway dies, but it's reported as some kind of accident. It's not reported as a suicide. They don't tell anybody. And then about 5 years later, his last wife and widow tells the New York Times that, yeah, it was a suicide, and we all kind of knew, and let's not be weird about it. It was a suicide. It was a tragedy. And so that was in 66. And then 4 years later, they put up this play, Happy Birthday, Wanda June. So I feel like they...
So it's still kind of too soon, but it wasn't like,
Yeah.
I thought it was running, and then he shot himself, and they're like, let's keep it going. In fact, let's have the guy shoot himself at the end.
Right.
Like, that's pretty poor taste. That's in pretty poor taste.
Yeah, right, that would be,
4 years later, sure, fine. Fuck him.
Yeah,
Fuck Hemingway.
It's been long
Yeah,
enough.
he's been dead for 4 years. Screw that guy.
Well, dead 9 years, and then just
There
we
you
knew.
go.
You know?
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, I would have run it 5 years earlier then. My rule is if the president has changed, you can make jokes about anything previous to that point. Try that. See if it works out in public.
Let's zing early 2016. Here it comes.
Exactly.
So once the characters just sort of very presentationally describe
you got your
themselves.
cast, you got your big apartment that all the action's going to take place in.
Yeah. And then you have Penelope and Paul in the apartment. Then both suitors come through, Norbert and Herb. And also you find out that today is Harold's birthday. And so Paul is very upset that he's like, why aren't we even celebrating it? And I think there's a reason for his frustrated wife and the guys trying to get her not celebrating it. Makes sense to me. But he's very upset about it. And so then he sprints out of the house. And Herb says, I'm going to go after him, don't worry. And then, meanwhile, Norbert and Penelope kind of catch up with each other and talk about their plans to, hopefully get married someday. And then Herb comes back and says, well, I couldn't catch the kid. He's running through the park, which is probably Central Park at night.
Yeah.
But I did get a cake, so that's pretty good. Right?
Yeah, he got a birthday cake because he also agrees with Paul they should be celebrating Harold's birthday, because even though he's a suitor who wants to marry the presumed dead guy's wife, he, like Paul, worships, I know we said this, but I want to hammer it home.
Yeah.
He represents the dude who is not masculine, is a normal dude doing a normal job, but has totally drunk the Kool-Aid and thinks the type of dude that drives Jeeps and shoots lions is the coolest type of dude to be. He's not that guy, but he would love to be and thinks it's awesome. And whereas Shuttle, as we said, is the peacenik who can very easily articulate why a rich dude shooting a lion in a country that he's not from gives no benefit to anyone.
Yeah.
And often does say so.
Yeah. And I feel like they're both, it's sort of like that Star Trek original series episode where like Captain Kirk gets split into two people and neither one's effective as a captain, you know?
Yeah.
Like, but they're both kind of different sides of how to feel about masculinity, and neither of them really functions or works as a person.
Yeah, and they both represent not their own thing, but ways to react to what Harold is bringing to the table energy-wise.
Right.
Like, yeah, you only care about them insofar as, oh, okay, so he's always going to be totally opposed to violence. I wonder how Harold will react to that. And if Penelope will choose him, therefore symbolically choosing pacifism. Or if she'll choose the guy who thinks it's cool. So yeah, so Shuttle goes out to chase Paul because he's much more concerned about, like, Paul's right, Harold's great. And he's always trying to, like, get Paul to like him by complimenting Harold. Whereas Woodley's always trying to convince Paul that he should respect his father, but doesn't need to lead the same life of violence. And Paul's like, fuck you, yeah, I do. He was great. So Shuttle comes back with a cake that says Happy Birthday Wanda June on it. Hence the title. People are like, well, why? And he's like, well, it was a spur of the moment thing. It's night. They weren't going to make a cake. Someone didn't pick up their cake.
Right.
So this is whoever, some stranger named Wanda June. It was her birthday. I figure we could scrape the Wanda June off and it'll just say Happy Birthday. That's his plan.
Right.
And then Paul will be happy because he'll see that we love his father.
Yeah, yeah.
And she's like, but he's not here. You were supposed to get him. And he's like, yeah, but I got a cake.
And she's like, okay, I'll track him down.
Yeah.
I'll go
does she? Does she go look for him?
I think so.
I don't remember some of the details.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the last thing we find out is that Shuttle did briefly glimpse Paul and say, come back, Paul, come back. And Shuttle says, Paul said, why don't you take a flying fuck at the moon, and ran into the dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just quoting one of Kurt's favorite things as a child, which is great.
Yeah,
it's
clearly, it's his Samuel L. Jackson motherfucker. Like, it's just his favorite curse word, and he's going to use it a lot.
And then Penelope runs off to try to find Paul as best she can. And then I think Woodley stays, and then is just
Woodley stays
like
alone
kind
in
of
the
sleeping
apartment.
in the apartment
Yeah.
by himself. And then Harold Ryan returns. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
He still has a key, so he just comes back in along with his friend who he was stranded in the Amazon with, Colonel Looseleaf Harper.
Yeah, and he's immediately very imperiously, even though it's been, I think, 11 or 13 years or something, is like judging whether they did everything right in his absence.
Yeah.
So he goes around being like, oh, good, the boarhead's still there. The doorbell plays the right thing. They didn't change the locks. I approve. And then he sees a dude sleeping on the couch and is like, this won't do.
Right.
And starts asking, doesn't reveal who he is, obviously, but wakes this guy up and is like, is the proprietress of this house still Penelope Ryan? And does she still yearn for her missing husband? Like, you know, all the Odysseus type shit, being like, you all worshipped me while I was gone, right? Like, my wife is still just waiting for me alone in a dark room, right? Can we defrost her now? I'm ready for more wife, please.
And Woodley, he manages to coax out of Woodley that Woodley is a fiance of hers, and he's like, oh, ho, ho, ho,
Right, yeah.
oh, but he still doesn't reveal who he is. And then Woodley gets out of there, and then...
Which is funny, because Woodley thinks they're burglars.
Right.
But is still able to be intimidated into leaving them alone in the apartment.
Yeah.
Because a big guy comes in and is just like, well, good talk. You better leave now. And he's like, okay, I'll go.
You're probably right.
Oh, and we should talk about Looseleaf. Harold is not alone. He has a humorous sidekick.
Yeah. So the two of them were trapped in the Amazon stranded, and Looseleaf Harper was someone who flew the plane to drop the atomic bomb on Nagasaki in World War II. And so that hangs heavy on him constantly. And then he is also sort of, he also left behind a family in New York that he needs to go see. So now that Harold and Looseleaf are there, Harold's like, okay, well, Looseleaf, get out of here, because you can go check on that family. I'll check on this family. We'll just do that.
We're finally
And
home,
Looseleaf is like, let's talk about how they invented Playboy magazine while we were gone. Isn't that crazy? Please hang out with me. Just keep hanging out with me. I miss you, you know?
He's like a comical moron. He loves Harold and doesn't want to stop hanging out, even though they've been in the jungle only together for a decade.
Yeah.
Is just amazed by all the changes that have taken place. Doesn't want to go home in a sitcom fashion. Because he's like, my wife Alice is going to tear my ass.
Yeah.
I'm real late for dinner, man. So he's totally like, it's a weird juxtaposition. He's a sitcom side character for comic relief who dropped the bomb on Nagasaki.
Right.
And I think there's definitely intentionality there. He did that, and then the other thing we know he did as a pilot is he's Harold's personal pilot. So he dropped the atomic bomb on Nagasaki, and he dropped Harold Ryan off on Africa.
Right.
Both very damaging, ill-advised flights.
Yeah, because especially when Harold's introducing himself early in the play, I think he says that he's killed like 200 people in war
Right.
and many more animals. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, so you're just wantonly destroying the entire environment. It's great. So Harold finally gets Loose Leaf out of his place, because then the scene ends with Harold's finally alone in the apartment, and he's like, "Oh, a cake. Who's Wanda June?" Which is like a nice joke.
That's the
That's
end,
fun.
yeah. Blackout.
And then blackout, and then straight to the next scene is just a little girl who's Wanda June doing a speech directly to the audience about how she was killed by a drunk driver that day, and now she's in heaven, and heaven's
that's
super
why
great.
that's why her cake wasn't picked up.
Yeah, because she was murdered.
She was
like,
murdered that day.
right before or on her birthday. Yeah.
She's described as, she is as cute as Shirley Temple. That's her across the page, yeah. She's up in heaven. She does another one of Kurt's favorite bits, which is explaining how mundane and boring heaven is.
Yeah. But
This
like,
time, instead
chilled
of-
out too.
yeah,
Just
this-
like, yeah, we play shuffleboard a lot.
Right. This
Which is
time,
a weird
instead of
joke.
the joke being everyone hangs out on a green felt expanse, it's everyone plays shuffleboard. That's the only activity, but you love it.
Yeah.
Magically.
Like, it's just
Hitler
really
plays
good.
shuffleboard, Einstein plays shuffleboard. It's all fine.
And I think there's beer. Like that's it. Like there's
Oh,
shuffleboard
yeah, there's
and beer.
shuffleboard and beer.
And that's it. And it's good.
I
You know.
wonder if that's Kurt's idea of a perfect afternoon. Like, if that's why that was his heaven.
Well, his
Because mine would be like, oh, yeah, up in heaven, everyone plays Magic the Gathering cards and eats Cool Ranch Doritos. You know, like everyone's concept of heaven.
right. We all play Civ 5 and have a Diet Dr. Pepper.
There's you. Man,
right.
we gave some great insights to ourselves just now. Diet Dr. Pepper.
That's pretty good.
What about cherry vanilla Diet Dr. Pepper? Do anything for you?
Vanilla, somewhat cherry, not with that.
Let me up the game. What about caffeine-free Diet Cherry Vanilla Dr. Pepper?
No, because the
right.
caffeine-free kinds, it's like it should just be like an empty can at that point. Like why, you know?
What about Dr. Pepper? No. So yeah, it's a very short interlude of them in heaven, and
There's
that's
also-
it. It doesn't tie directly to the plot. Like she's not gonna affect anything.
Well,
it's an interlude.
I do want it with heaven concepts. That Kurt saying of if this isn't nice, I don't know what is. One time he talks about that. He says it came from his uncle Alex, and his uncle Alex would say it like after having a bunch of German food and dark beer, and like sitting back and thinking. So I think like that really is his heaven. Is just like a nice meal and then chilling out after. That'd be great.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, and they have other stuff, actually. They have merry-go-rounds that don't cost anything to ride. They have Ferris wheels. They have Little League and girls basketball.
Yeah, but it's like it's still very shuffleboard centric,
Right.
and it's very like community centered.
Heaven is
it's
like a big New England rec room. Yeah, like
right,
like
a suburban park district.
Yeah,
set up
exactly.
heaven, you know, which is great. So then, after Wanda June's speech, we get another speech from Loose Leaf. This is just a whole scene of different speeches to the audience, and Loose Leaf talks about when he dropped the bomb on Nagasaki and how he felt about it, and talks about going to a town where he was asked to speak to some Eagle Scouts in a church basement, but he was mostly struck by how weird Eagle Scouts are because that's like a hard
he's
thing
easily
to go get.
distracted.
Yeah, and it's hard to tell if that's always been his personality or if just his brain kind of broke a little bit after he
Right.
did that horrible thing. But also, how do you blame him? But also, maybe you do blame him. Anyway, he describes the overall.
Yeah, he goes from dropping the bomb
experience
to
of that.
Eagle Scouts. He goes from Eagle Scouts to how weird all the different merit badges are. And he goes from that to earn one of his merit badges when he was a scout. He had to find out what his city did with all the sewage in their town. And he found out that they just dump it directly into the river everyone gets their water from. I love how he seems like he doesn't know what he's talking about and he's just going tangent to tangent to tangent. But it starts with senseless act of destruction of the community and circles back to that as well.
Yeah.
Almost as if he's trying to give an excuse like, hey, you know, people hurt each other all the time. I'm not the, but he doesn't even know he's doing that. Like he's just blithely talking about, like in the same sentence, he goes, also, one time I fought a guy while I was wearing roller skates and he was wearing shoes. It's really hard. Don't ever fight a guy wearing roller skates.
Right.
Nagasaki.
Which is like just a great mental picture to. Anyway, I dropped the A-bomb. But man, fighting a guy when I was
Yeah.
in skates.
And he's like, yeah, my mom used to say you got to chew a banana for a full minute before you swallow for health reasons. Anyway, I'm out.
And then the next scene starts as what seems like it's going to be another speech where it's Harold talking directly to the audience, but then we go into a flashback of when Harold met Penelope, and it was when Harold went to a burger place and she was a waitress.
A roller skate waitress.
Yeah.
So we have some kind of tie into the last scene, I guess.
Right. And she's 18 and a half, she says, and he's an older man, and he just like
much older.
Very, very possessively is just like, you're a woman, and just like, no, you will marry me. And that's their whole courtship. That's it.
Yeah. It's as creepy as can be because he calls her daughter.
Right.
He says like, well, it's okay, daughter, because I'm here to claim you. Everything will be fine. You're married to me now, daughter.
Right.
It's like as bizarre as it could be from a modern courtship perspective.
Yeah. And I think, and intended to be weird back then too, but
weird back then too, but it has it even
improved.
weirder now. And she's also like, you're acting really weird. This is weird. And then she's like, okay, I'll marry you. You're very forceful.
Yeah. And also, and the scene
His line
ends.
is-
And the scene ends with he's like, I've been shooting Mao Mao in
Jesus
Africa.
Christ.
And then she's like, oh, what's that? And he says it's black people. He was shooting black people. In
Yeah,
Africa
he says
for fun.
it's a kind of an animal with black skin. It's a kind of a man. It's called a Mao Mao.
Yeah. And then
I've been
scene
hunting
over.
those for a while.
Holy hell.
Holy shit. And earlier, or like a few lines before, he says, well, like, I'm a multimillionaire, so just quit fucking around. You're going to marry me. Just get in the car. Right. And she goes, I'm engaged.
Right. I'm a person.
And he says, but daughter, I love you very much. That's just so creepy. I don't know.
It's awful.
I want to bone you because you remind me of my daughter. I shoot black people. Get in my car. This is the guy we're dealing. This is why Satan's pitchfork is the cover of the book.
Right, and it's like not even that far into the play. There's a lot of play to go, and you have to keep watching.
Building
this
his
guy.
character up.
Yeah, it's crazy. Then the next scene, we go back to the
the
apartment.
present time. Yeah,
Harold
Paul comes home finally from the park.
He comes home. Harold is alone in the apartment, kicking around. Harold continues to pretend to not be himself and just be like a guy. So he just is just like, yeah, I'm a friend of your dad's, and then tells.
But
him
in order
about
to find out if people think of him the right way, right? Like he's like,
it's an Odyssey plot point.
What stories do you know of your father? Are you appropriately in awe of him?
Yeah,
because I've heard amazing things. Tell me how great he is. Yeah, it's bizarre.
Yeah.
As Odysseus did to Telemachus, I believe, there was a scene where he's like, yeah, and do they still hold me dear in their hearts, the people of Ithaca or whatever?
Right.
He's like, yeah, of course, Dad. Like, come on. You know your own dad. He knows it's him.
I figured it out. I'm not an idiot.
Yeah. Oh, and he pumps Paul for information about, like, what's the deal with these suitors. Paul's like, yeah, she met the doctor in college. And he's like, what? My wife went to college? Oh, what a tragedy. Educating a woman is like pouring maple syrup into a fine Swiss watch. It no longer is good for anything. Yeah. Paraphrasing because we're not at Kurt Blurt's, but that's his basic response is his biggest disappointment is, she educated herself while I was gone. I'm probably going to have to divorce this one and give her a baseball stadium.
Right. But I was only gone more than a decade.
Yeah. You're telling me she has a fiance and a diploma? Unacceptable.
And then also one of the stories he even like prompts Paul to ask him about. He's like, ask me. He's like, okay, tell me about it. Is when he fought Siegfried von Königswald, the beast of Yugoslavia in World War II, who is a made-up Nazi from World War II. But he talks about that, and then we go to Siegfried von Königswald in heaven doing a monologue.
Although, I want to just real quick characterize it.
Yeah.
Is Paul tells him how his own stories of how great he is, and he's very pleased. So he gets into it, and he seems to have a moment of, I love this kid. I'm so glad I'm bonding with my son. I'm going to mold him to be like me. He seems excited. Because, like, Paul says, tell me stories about Dad. And he goes like, Dad, huh? Yeah. Dad, like he's gonna embrace this role. So he goes like, well, I'll tell you, kid. I'll tell you a story you probably never heard about your dad because only I knew because I was there. You know what he did? He there was this famous Nazi, and he just snuck up behind him like a animal, and he slit his goddamn throat and just let the blood pour down. And Paul's like, that's a horrible story. He just slit his throat. Was he sad about it? And he's like, no, let me tell you about this other guy. He poisoned him, and he like laughed while the guy just clutched at his stomach and died and frothed at the mouth.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's awful. And he's like, what do you mean? I thought you were proud of all the people your dad killed. So like you see Paul being confronted with, did you not understand the details? I'm saying I kill people. I stab them in the eye.
Right.
I shoot them in the stomach. And now Paul is starting to realize like, oh, it's very unsavory also. Like the details are not pleasant. So it sort of ends on that note of him being like, oh, well, maybe this kid isn't my spitting image. It's kind of awkward. And then it cuts to heaven again.
Yeah. And they don't quite hit it off, which is great for future scenes where I feel like there are some fun, just awkward beats written in.
Yeah.
Like it depend on performance a lot, but there's some like dumb hugs and stuff that are great. And then, that next scene is Siegfried von Königswald doing another monologue about heaven and just talking about how, Wanda June's cool. I don't know. I like shuffleboard. It's a good hang, Just like...
Yeah, and von Königswald, identifies himself as, yes, it is I, Van Königswald, the very same Nazi he just described slitting the throat of. Yeah. I hang out with Wanda June up in heaven now.
Yeah.
Because we have this Harold Ryan connection, which is funny because Wanda June's only connection is that he stole her cake. But so, like, in heaven, there's a club of people who have been harmed by Harold Ryan in life, including his first wife, whose life he ruined, a man whose throat he slit, and a little girl whose birthday cake he stole inadvertently. They all have an axe to grind with Harold Ryan.
Yeah. Actually, I hadn't thought of it. It's a karass. I hadn't thought of it that way.
Oh, yeah. Their karass centered around the fact that he's a huge dick.
Yeah.
But I like that Wanda June's only claim to know him is very mild. It's like, well, your head was already crushed by a truck. Is it that bad that he took your birthday cake?
Yeah. And also Königswald has a story about killing an allied guy with orange juice, which then Harold Ryan took revenge for, and he describes it as, and then I said we were just following orders, and then I realized, like, I'm saying that about killing a guy with orange juice.
The scene ends with him saying, when they had to question me in court, I realized I had to say something very weird, which is, hey, I was only following orders as a good soldier. Hitler told me to kill this guy with orange juice. And then I did, so I guess I'm culpable. But
Hitler's the weirdo.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, the classic Vonnegut cycle of everyone has hurt everyone. Where does the blame end, right?
Right.
He slit this Nazi's throat, which makes you be like, man, that's a rough way to go. Then you find out the Nazi, of course, is a Nazi, so he's done equally horrible things. Everyone kind of sucks. It's hard to sift out, like, who's the bad guy and who's the good guy. Oh, and what's great is in that heaven scene, he literally is retelling the story of having his own throat get slit. Because the way Harold told it is, like an action movie. Basically, I went in, I killed all his bodyguards, he's sleeping upstairs, and then I said in perfect, flawless German, a cool James Bond line, which is like, I believe you've been expecting me, I'm First Corporal Harold Ryan, and I'm about to slit your throat, or whatever. He just says something badass in perfect German, he says, in perfect German.
Yeah.
And then von Königswald tells the story of his throat getting slit, and he's like, I woke up, I heard some ruckus, I went downstairs, there was this, like, flushed, oafish-looking American saying some like nonsense I couldn't understand, and then he stabbed me in the throat. Like his German was so crappy that the guy he killed did not know what he was saying.
Right.
That cool action line did not matter or affect anything.
Didn't
I like that. Yeah. He's like, and then he said something in German, and I was like, what? And then he stabbed me in the throat.
I also, whenever I'm reading a play, part of me a little bit wonders, like, oh, what if this was a movie instead or something? That's like the one bit of this I wish was a movie where like we could see him doing his like, habe I'm oofen, you're dead. Like, like just see the terrible German happen with a voiceover or something. This should be a play though. I think it works better that way.
Yeah.
And then we go back to the apartment from there.
Yep.
Paul is still talking to Harold. Then Penelope and Herb come back. And then it's gradually revealed to everyone. Penelope realizes, but also Harold just tells other people that, oh, this is Harold. He's back. And Herb Shuttle is immediately like, well, we had a good time, Penelope. See ya. I am way too worshipful of this guy. He's alive. goodbye, I'm out.
Right, I'm no longer suiting you, but I will hang out and be buddies with Harold Ryan if he'll have me.
Right.
Like, he immediately tries to, like, nudge his elbow at Harold Ryan and be like, you want to play cards sometime or anything? Did you notice how I, like, gave your wife right back? You just asked once, I gave her right back.
Yeah.
Can we be friends?
I'm probably pretty cool.
Right,
You know,
and he's also like, yeah, and fuck Woodley. I hate that guy, too. He's such a nerd. Tell me about all the lions you shot. I love it.
Right.
Oh, and Penelope announces that she's going to marry Woodley. That she's like,
Yeah.
well, I wasn't even engaged to Shuttle. He's just hanging around. I'm engaged to this peacenik doctor. I'm announcing that now. We've
Right.
set a date and shit. And Paul, the son, immediately says, well, I'm going to kill myself. So unacceptable. And Harold says, well, I'm going to kill the doctor.
Right.
And take you back in the way that you'd expect Hemingway to do.
And it's right. It's all it's in keeping with his overall vibe, which also, obviously, we're reading this in text as a play, but this is happening in a room in an apartment that is covered in animal heads on the wall.
That he killed.
And,
so
yeah,
he's not bluffing.
Yeah, and once in a while he like chin chucks one and says, "How you been?" when he gets back. You know, which is not a
Right.
bad joke. And also there's also an earlier joke that I like where they just point out that like Paul's like, "I love Harold, he's the best," and Woodley's like, "Yeah, how's that cough you have going? How's that like fungus under your thumb going?" And he's like, "Oh, it's fine, it's whatever." It's like clearly these animal heads are all giving them diseases and stuff.
Right, because they
Which is,
carry,
like,
they're
a really-
filthy. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a really funny touch to me.
Yeah.
That just everyone's very sick from the animal heads.
Right. So then Woodley comes back. He was out on a doctor's appointment, which is why he didn't come back at the same time as they were
Yeah.
out on a date, but Penelope comes back alone. He comes back having just helped a police officer deliver a baby in a taxi cab. So literally
Pretty cool.
helping people and bringing life into the world.
Right.
Walks into the room and Harold's like, I'm going to take your life out of the world. Very emblematic of their two management styles.
Yeah, so it builds to the end of Act 1
Okay, yeah,
where
sorry, let's-
Penelope is just too burned out on dealing with Harold being back, Harold insisting that he's just going to take her back now, and just like I love it, he said defrost, like just, well,
Yeah.
here we go. And she says, nope, I'm just going to bed. Tomorrow's a new day. Forget it. I can't deal with this.
Yeah, it ends with basically Penelope finally standing up and saying, look, you're not going to murder me. I know you're not. I'm not going to get married to you. Bye. I'm going to bed. I hope when I wake up there are fewer people in the apartment.
Right. And then Act 2 starts with the next morning. And
of course Harold's very vindictively like, fuck you, it's my money, it's my apartment,
yeah,
and you're my wife, I own you.
right.
But she shuts the door and locks it, and he doesn't break it down, so it seems like it ends for now. But Harold obviously is like, well, I'm not leaving. It's my goddamn apartment, and he just
Right.
stays in the living room hanging out, waiting for her to come out, presumably.
Yeah, like this state of affairs can continue for a little while, is
Yeah.
his opinion. Like,
So-
all right, I'll give you a night, I guess, but like,
Right.
come on.
So he hangs out. Loose Leaf comes over to hang out with him, and Shuttle comes back to hang out with him because he likes him so much. So they sit around playing cards and telling Shuttle stories of Africa and the diamond hunt. And basically, Harold's main motivation is to raise his boy right. Like, he's just being real fatherly. Like, the most emblematic moment to me was Paul goes like, he passed the ketchup, and he goes, that's not what you say, boy. You say, pass the fucking ketchup. Or he says that to Shuttle, but so both of them. But he's throwing out like to Paul and Shuttle, this is how you live. This is what a man is.
Yeah.
You're pathetic. You sell vacuum cleaners? Pathetic.
Yeah. and also this is going on. Harold is clearly ill to an extent. At one point, somebody says to him, shouldn't you lie down? And he says, when I'm dead or fucking, which is like a really good gag for him. And then they're like, oh, what are you going to do for your health? And he says, well, there's this root from the jungle I chew, so I'll be fine.
Oh, also, and I love, and he makes a big fucking deal about, it's one of the many benefits I brought back from my explorations. Outside of the native tribesmen, no Western person's aware of this fabulous root, but I've been chewing it for years, and it keeps me hale and hearty. And it's not penicillin, I forget what it is, but it's important to note at the end, Woodley, when he's cutting him down to size and being like, you're so full of shit, one of the things is I had that root tested, dude. It's like willow bark with penicillin in it. Like, it's
Right.
not, but whatever
It
is,
was
he's
discovered
like,
decades
it's
ago.
discovered like 80 years ago. It's available in pill form at the drugstore down the street. Like, get
Yeah.
over yourself, dude.
Right.
One of the many things you think is great that was nothing is that you found this root. Also, it's not helping you. You're dying of your disease.
Right.
You just think it makes you feel better because it gives you a mild buzz or whatever. But that doesn't happen yet. First, Harold gets his last hurrah of bossing everyone around, basically. So this scene basically develops in Paul and Looseleaf's presence. He demolishes Shuttle. Shuttle gets the feeling, and he sort of leads him on, I think, knowingly, that he's becoming ingratiated to this group. And then he goes like, hey, let me ask you something. Your vacuum cleaner, is anyone going to be using that 100 years from now? And Shuttle immediately is like, oh, shit. You're making fun of me, aren't you? And he goes, no. I just think you're a worthless waste of human life who should have been born a woman who, I think are garbage. And you should leave now. Like, just destroys him cruelly.
Yeah.
To the point where Shuttle starts tearing up and he does the classic asshole bully thing, which is like, oh, are you going to cry now? Are you crying? Leave my goddamn house.
Right.
And it's like out of the blue. The guy's like, literally,
it's
like,
really mean.
I was just liking you, and even if you say mean things to me, I still like you. And he's like, great, pussy, bye. That's that scene. And I think it's for Paul's benefit. He's like, Paul, do you see? This is like what men are like. Watch this shit.
And also, Woodley leaves in disgust and says, I'm not dealing with this, which just leaves Harold and Penelope and Paul in the apartment. Mm-hmm. And then Harold's like, great, Paul, get out of here. Me and your mother are going to mate. Here's $100 to get yourself breakfast. Go. Like, it's very It's like very Lucille Bluth, go see a Star Wars. Oh, man,
yeah.
Like,
Penelope finally comes out of her bedroom and is like, listen, we need to talk. And he's like, oh, good, you're awake. We're going to fuck now? Paul, leave. I don't want you to see us fuck. Right. I require one fuck. Penelope's like, no.
Right.
We're not doing that. You're terrible.
We need to speak
He
first.
starts to get angrier, more threatening, more Hemingway-esque when Hemingway was drunk, I imagine.
Right. And then Looseleaf comes back from there and wants to talk about being friends again with Harold and says that like things went very badly with Looseleaf's wife, who is also very angry at him.
And Looseleaf says, Harold says, Looseleaf, this is why we have to like torture prisoners of war and destroy works of art and shit. The enemy needs to fear us uncontrollably and think of us as demons. Otherwise, they'll come for our women. And he goes, I didn't think we had women anymore. Looseleaf. It's like, well, my wife just kicked me out and we still have women? It's like, nah, our collective women, man.
Right. The things. And then they argue some more about it. Also, Looseleaf reveals that when he got back to his wife's place, his wife's mother-in-law opened the door and was so surprised at seeing him that she died of shock. So now he has to go deal with a funeral and everything.
Well, and he says, and I am going to go to the funeral, but I don't know if it's going to work out with me and Alice. And he goes like, well, who cares? She's garbage. She was always garbage. Now I see Penelope's also garbage. Just doubling down on,
right.
I want people to feel, because that's the thrust of the play, is what's wrong with the way this guy views the world, and he stays true to that.
Well, and they blow out his wrongness, too, in this scene. Like, he uses the N-word, he gets called out on it by Penelope, and then Harold's like, no, I can't have any prejudices at all because I've fought every kind of man, right, of every race, and I've had sex with every kind of woman of every race. Yeah. So how could I be prejudiced, right? I've killed and fucked everything.
Because you know how if you kill someone, you gain a full understanding of their life experience.
Right.
That's why Jeffrey Dahmer is the most empathetic, knowledgeable, wise person walking the face of the earth.
Right.
That was a joke, in case it wasn't clear.
Just edit that out so it's out of context. No.
Yeah.
He also clearly doesn't care if Penelope consents to sex. He says, you don't know what you want, which is not great.
Trust me, you want sex from me.
Yeah.
Ugh, disgusting.
I'm
sorry. I just glanced by and have to laugh at how funny it is. When Shuttle's still in the phase where he's trying to impress him, there's a scene which would be, I just couldn't imagine how funny it would be as the live play, where he gets the ketchup by saying, pass the fucking ketchup, and then he continues to pass it around the table, and he looks down and notices, like, because he was talking or scared, he was a little skimpy on the ketchup on his fries, like he wants more ketchup, so he timidly goes like, I'm sorry, can you pass the fucking ketchup again? I love, it's also really, really funny. I think we're focusing on the darkness so much, I just want to remind people that it's hilarious too.
Yeah, there's a lot of good jokes in it. Yeah, like
much like Get Out, like it can fuck with your sense of right and wrong, while being hilarious also.
I still haven't seen Get Out.
Well, it's both.
I gotta get on it.
It's both of those.
Yeah.
Scary and hilarious. Scarelarious. Working title for Get Out was Scarelarious. Real downgrade, I thought.
So as Penelope and Harold keep arguing, and she keeps saying that, no, you're being a monster, and also she has some great stuff about heroes and how it seems like most heroes are bad at being at home, and we don't really like criticize them for it. We just let it go in stories, you know?
Hurt Locker kind of themes.
Also, Harold says he's going to go and smash Woodley's violin because it's Woodley's most valuable possession. And so
Woodley ruined my wife property. I'm going to ruin his instrument property.
Right. And so then she says, if you do that, I'll leave you. And he's like, fine. And she's like, fine. And then we black out. And then there's another scene of people doing monologues from heaven. And it's a whole group this time. We've got Koenigswald, we've got Wanda June, and we've also got Mildred, who was the previous wife of Harold and probably driven to drink by him. There's a part earlier in the play where he says, like, yeah, it seems like women always end up as alcoholics.
No, closet. He hates all women, and he says one of the things he hates about them is they're obviously weak because every woman he's ever been with for any length of time ended up having to drink in secret. It's like, that's you, dude. That's your fault.
Yeah.
He's like, they're probably all closet alcoholics. Every woman that I berate eventually ends up drinking. It's bizarre. I don't get
it. And Mildred tells horrible stories about him. Yeah. And then we find out that the three of them, along with other people, have been kind of a like emotional support group for each other after the horrible experience of being alive.
This is where they mention the club. It's like tongue in cheek, but they're like, yeah, up in heaven we have a 3-person club where we all support each other for how we got fucked over by Harold Ryan. And, you know, they also say, we're really excited to welcome him. Like, they do a backhanded code word for just, we hope he dies soon. They're like, and we just can't wait to see him popping up here in heaven. Meaning, like, we hope he dies real soon. And it's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I still don't know why, but I'll ask that during the meet. I don't know why it's called Happy Birthday, Wanda June, but we'll get to that in the meet.
Yeah,
we're so close. So that's the last heaven scene.
Yeah, and then now we move into pretty much the last scene of the play. Yeah. We're back at the apartment. We're seeing Loose Leaf and Harold together after the funeral for Loose Leaf's mother-in-law.
Yeah,
and the two of them are kind of catching up. Shuttle comes back and says, hey, I just wanted to be your guy's friend, but anyway, it's cool.
And they go, get the fuck out of here!
And then
Woodley comes back. No, then Penelope comes back first.
Right.
It's for her clothes and things.
Yeah, it's kind of all the men, all the catch-up stuff, and then Penelope's back, and she's like, I'm just here for my clothes, I'm going to do that. And they all kind of get in more of a fight about who Harold is
Philosophy.
And what he's about. Yeah.
Harold starts actually mounting defense for the first time, like logically.
Yeah.
He uses the classic, a few good men scene, I think, is the most in everyone's head of like the classic, you know, anyone who's had a job where they killed a bunch of people and then someone comes and says you shouldn't have killed all those people says, if I didn't kill all those people, they would have killed you, or you would have had to kill them. Like, get real. People need to die, or you won't have your money and the nice shit that you want, or safety eventually. Mm-hmm. Fuck you. I did what needed to be done, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Including hunting tribesmen. I guess that kept Penelope safe somehow, but...
Yeah, well, and then I feel like Penelope's response is really great, and she gets into some stuff about how, oh, guys like you, Harold, with your mindset, you think that death is an honor. Like, you think by killing something, you're making it part of some kind of epic story, you're making it part of some kind of cool struggle or something. You think death is an exciting thing, but that means you don't really have a purpose other than eventually dying. Like, you just keep risking death until you're going to dramatically die at the end of your life, and that's it, isn't it?
Which he tries to orchestrate presently.
And that, either that or things before this kind of break his brain. And
well, he gets so threatening that Paul eventually comes out with a rifle.
Yeah.
Basically, he becomes so scary and is like, but you're garbage to me now. You left me. He doesn't say he's going to kill her, but he's like, I could kill anyone I want. You think I can't kill your doctor fiance? You think I couldn't kill you if I wanted to kill you? Like, I've killed hundreds of people. And Paul comes out, obviously having learned his lesson and switched sides with his father's hunting rifle.
Yeah.
Points it at him. Classic protecting mom from abusive dad style. And he does classic abusive dad move of, well, is it loaded? Oh, see there, son, the safety's on. Flip that little thing. Okay, good. Pull that lever. All right. Now you're ready to kill your old man. Do you think you're man enough to kill your old man?
Right. Straight up abuse.
And Penelope says my favorite line, which is, oh, I just realized what this all is. You're furious every time someone won't kill you. You do realize you're a piece of shit. Right. You're so angry because you kept expecting one of these Nazis to finally kill you. No one will kill you. The longer you live, the more you realize you're a piece of shit. That was my interpretation of that scene, and I loved it.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. And then I believe Penelope and Paul both leave and get out of there, which leaves Harold with just Woodley. And Woodley criticizes him some more, and Harold eventually asks Woodley to kill him. And Woodley won't shoot him, but Woodley also says, I think I already did kill you. Like, I put the idea in your head that you're an idiot and you're a clown and you are not the impressive person you think you are. And it's just going to keep echoing in your head. Like, I think you're dead, man. I don't know what to do.
And I know I'm right, so you're going to see the evidence mount up. And even if you can delude yourself some amount of time, you're going to eventually realize I'm right.
Yeah.
So, like, I won. I don't have to shoot you.
Right.
And Harold's sad.
And then Harold ducks off to shoot himself, and Woodley...
Well, he says, I'm just going to put this rifle back in the rifle/suicide room. Offstage suicide chamber. And he goes, now Harold, please promise me, the audience, Anton Chekhov and Harold Pinter, that we're not going to hear a gunshot from offstage. They say, he's like, you're not going to shoot yourself. And he goes, no. Just gonna go off stage. Gunshot.
And the way
gunshot from off stage.
The way Kurt is, I'm a little surprised Chekhov isn't literally in the play. I could see him easily doing that, just in heaven, like
stroking his goatee, watching, being like, good use of the gun in that play.
The play you are watching, it might have suicide in it because of gun. I'm just saying, and Chekhov anyway. And then offstage gunshot, and then Harold walks back and says, "I missed."
End of play.
Here's your show.
Took me so fucking long to get why that's a great ending. I think it is, but I didn't. What'd you think?
I'm into it too. Yeah.
I really want to know how it first hit you when you just read the last line and closed the book. What'd you think it meant?
I thought of The Sopranos, which I haven't really seen through, but I know about the ending. Yeah. And a professor had a theory that the whole show is mocking Tony Soprano and what he's about and his overall life. And so giving him an ending where it just sort of ends is like the final insult. Like, no, you don't even get that gangster ending. You don't even get to have that epic death in a hail of bullets at the toll booth
totally
kind of
agree.
Thing.
And we have mentioned especially talking in this play about how death lends things meaning, and you don't want to give him that meaning.
Yeah.
Because I have seen the whole series. I like the series. Sopranos.
Yeah.
And it totally does read as a deep examination of someone who thinks they're strong and smart and powerful and making the right moves and doesn't understand where their life is falling apart. And you, the audience, realize it's because if you do enough violence and evil and crime, like, shit starts to destabilize and go badly for you.
Right.
But Tony Soprano can't get his head out of his ass and figure that out.
Yeah.
He wants his life to get better, so he commits bigger, more heinous murders to try and get things, and it doesn't work out, and he can't figure out why. And I believe we covered on Cracked that, like, they've basically announced that there were previous iterations of the finale script, and they know, like, the creators of the show know, they die in a hail of gunfire as soon as the credits roll. But he doesn't deserve to do the death scene where he looks all heroic and dies in a hail of gunfire.
Right.
Yes, his life is going to go downhill until some gangster eventually kills him. Even if it's not these gangsters in this episode. What did you think he's going to happen? He'll die as a mobster. They all do eventually. Or he'll go to jail as a mobster.
Right.
Fuck Tony Soprano. It's basically the point. I feel like it was almost a Breaking Bad that didn't puss out at the end.
That's the thing.
Doesn't soften the blow at the end.
Because the opposite to me is Breaking Bad, where it's like, no, he dies among his... And it's like,
and it does seem
sad,
to lend meaning to his life, that he died tragically
like among
next
his meth.
to a meth lab.
Yeah, right.
That was somehow important.
With a Badfinger song and everything else.
Good song now. Great song.
It's a good song, yeah. So I thought the ending was like, you don't even get to have the Hemingway ending. You're no Hemingway.
Yep. You're
I knew Ernest Hemingway, Senator, and you're no Ernest Hemingway.
Yeah. It took me like a week to settle on that. I thought it was just a funny joke because of the Chekhov's gun thing. Like, it's so funny to have, of course, like every play, now we're going to hear a gunshot off stage. Oop, there it is. Now the lights will go down. Wait, he came back out. That's just funny. Like, if you knew plays well, that is a funny twist on what you would expect to see as a playgoer. But yeah, and then I realized, oh, it's also the perfect thing, because either he didn't have the guts to kill himself, which is cowardly, which is the last thing he would want,
right,
or he's so incompetent with a rifle that he missed shooting himself in the head, which is equally humiliating for, like, he prides himself on being a sharp shot hunter. That's his main deal.
Yeah.
So he's just pathetic. He's been, like the guy said, he's been deconstructed by the play, and he's been killed without needing to be killed. We don't have to see him die. It's over.
Right.
Him.
It's just, it's done.
And I think that's hopeful in a way, like Vonnegut is saying, and I hope it's true that the need for extreme violence is waning from the world rather than becoming more important.
I think he sees that it is too. Like, I think,
I don't know.
or at least
toss-up. In the scope of tens and hundreds of thousands of years, obviously it has, but
yeah, like, it's happening very slowly.
Yeah.
And there's still plenty of people who are into it, but I think he at least
violence,
I think he's at least arguing that the violence looks a little more ridiculous with each passing. And maybe it's just because this play even looks more ridiculous now. But like, I think he pretty effectively argues that if you just transpose Odysseus forward, he looks awful,
or like
even worse.
There can be good things about a turn of phrase or whatever, but you can see how dated in the negative way the cultural tropes of that culture were.
Yeah.
And it's great. It's good that we've progressed from then, and let's keep it going.
Yeah. There's something exciting about it.
And certainly more on, I mean, very much about violence in general, but also very, I think, distinctly pointed at masculinity.
Yeah.
What it means to be a male is to be a good man. And I'm not just saying that in the way where we mean all humankind. To be a good man in the things that are specific to living your life as identifying as a male. Is that violence? Is that the identifier of what it is to be male? It's asking questions like that. And I think about stuff like that a lot. I loved it.
Yeah, it's a great thing to get at.
It's really underrated. I hadn't read it before, and I don't hear a lot of praise for it, probably because it's off format. Like, just because it's a play and not a novel. But it's great.
Yeah, also, I feel like just reading plays doesn't get recommended the way reading novels does.
Yeah.
To the extent, unless it's Shakespeare, like, specifically.
Yeah, or Martin McDonagh.
Like,
Right. But yeah, right. If a playwright makes several really good hit movies and you found out he used to be a playwright, then you'll go read some plays. That's about it.
Check it out. Yeah. So I think we can go from here into another segment called Fortitude Time.
It's time to be strong.
Ooh, yeah.
We live in a fort.
Oh, yeah.
We not gonna be weak
lifting,
anymore.
Lifting.
Do you even fortitude, bro?
So that is, we have a few other little plays to look at. We're basically focusing on Kurt's plays from the 60s and 70s, which is where most all of them are from. And Fortitude
Little plays, the first one starring a Dr. Little.
Oh.
You are slaying puns this episode without even knowing it.
I'm a natural. I'm like Mr. Magooing into them. It's amazing.
Or like 5-tude. See, whereas I'm off. I'm off today.
You really decided to take a bullet there.
Yeah, I took one
yourself.
for the team. I did know how bad it was as I said it.
Fortitude ran in Playboy in September of 1968. I get the sense he probably wrote it a little earlier than that. It's also technically scripted as some sort of short film. There's camera moves and cuts.
I was going to ask you, are you sure it's a play? Because it often says cut to, and you cut to locations that would be easy to cut to in a movie, difficult to transition quickly to in a play.
Yeah.
So it might be a short film?
It's a little bit fuzzy. And
it reads
also
like a mix, because it's not written like a traditionally formatted screenplay either.
Yeah. Well, and it's not nearly the length that a feature would possibly be. It doesn't seem like it also doesn't seem like it. Like, a lot of times people will make a short film that's sort of a proof of concept of the movie they'd like to make. Mm-hmm. It doesn't seem like it's that. It seems like it's a pretty contained, this is what it is.
It seems like we could have covered it in Monkey House. Like, it reads as a pretty classic, strong, Kurt sci-fi concept short story.
Yes.
For some reason that eludes us. Yeah. Playboy wanted him to write it as a script, or he wanted to write it as a script instead of prose, so he did.
Yeah.
But it's fine. It works either way.
Well, and we also know that from the early 60s on, he had some connection to Hollywood. Like, he wasn't getting things made, but he was he had agents who were presenting things to people.
He had that sweet Rodney Dangerfield connect.
Yeah. Right. And so it does seem like he might have had the thought in his head, oh, I could make a movie, but then never turn this into what would be a movie.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just
yeah. Could be
it's that format. But,
experimenting with the format of film.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Fortitude puts us in a house in upstate New York because upstate
Surprise.
New York, Kurt. And we're seeing the operation of Dr. Norbert Frankenstein, who has turned all but the head of a woman into mechanical parts.
Obviously, don't even need to go into the name shit at this time.
He also has an
yeah.
assistant named Tom Swift, which is another character. From
Right?
stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, no.
And then,
Dr. Manslaughter Abomination Frankenstein is doing some super science, and we hope it goes well.
Yeah, and he gets visited by a regular doctor whose name is Elbert Little because, of course, he's a little person in the scope of what's going on. And
Not in the literal sense.
And it's pretty short, but it tours us around. There's one room where mechanical versions of every organ in the human body are running, and then there's another room where the woman's head is, who's being kept alive and created by Dr. Frankenstein.
So it's one of the wealthiest women in the world, inherited money from a billionaire tycoon husband.
Her name's Sylvia Lovejoy.
Sylvia Lovejoy.
Yeah.
And
she also has a beautician named Gloria, who's sort of her friend, but also is kind of a caretaker, and also maybe a flaw in the system, because we find out that Sylvia has occasionally asked to be killed, because these machines are going to keep her alive forever, and she, on some level, would like to die at this point.
Yeah, so the basic premise, if you didn't read it and aren't going to read it, is imagining when medical science can keep you alive indefinitely, but the weird period where it's only available to the ultra-wealthy. So this is like one of the richest people on Earth, therefore she's allowed to be immortal. However, the technology is in its infancy, so like computers, your fake organs and your pacemaker and shit take up an entire building, and you're just a head on a tripod with two robot arms.
Yeah.
That's all they can actually keep alive. However, they also, because they have control of your central nervous system, you're happy all the time.
Yeah.
They drug you, like, they'll literally be like, send her up a little bit of LSD. They literally say LSD because she's undergoing a trauma right now. We want her to be out of her mind, and, you know, like a patient on a morphine drip. So basically, everything seems hunky-dory, peachy keen, but there's these little hints that in weird moments where maybe the drugs wear off and they don't administer enough quickly enough or something, she'll suddenly go like, kill me, please kill me. And then they'll press a button, she'll go like, never mind, I didn't mean that. Don't kill me. That would be the last thing I would want.
Right.
So the question is, well, wait, if you're a conscionable person, should we kill her? It seems like, is that the real her that wants to die? And the doctor's like, no. Your brain is only chemicals. The real her is also the one that is happy and loves being alive.
Yeah.
So you'd be murdering that person if you listen to the person who said, please kill me, in a single moment of sadness. That's like saying anyone who says, I feel like killing myself, you should shoot them immediately. But of course, our human instinct is like, well, it still seems fucked up. I don't know. It just seems weird.
Yeah. And it's another, I think, really interesting angle on that thing Kurt gets at pretty frequently, where just the idea is that people's bodies will determine a lot of who they are. Like, just chemistry and chemicals and synapses firing is a lot of who we are as people. Like, we're just creating personalities and things on top of that.
Yeah.
And so
do you have any true core identity, or is it fair to say someone who has had a schizophrenic break, like, I know the real you's still in there? Well, I don't know what's real in that context. Like, all brain things are chemical combinations, so you can say, I hope you stop evincing evidence of violent schizophrenia, but it's not a less real person that's going through that.
Yeah, yeah. There's a David Wong column where he talks about that a bit, where, like, in our heads we will treat a lot of bad things we do as, oh, I was tired, or I was drunk, or that wasn't the real me. But, like, it kind of is, you know? Like, it happened.
And the opposite, which is that I think one of the most human things to do that I don't notice people catch themselves doing a lot is to have a very obvious chemical baseline reason for being in a bad mood.
Yeah.
Like, you ate at the wrong time, your sleep cycle is off, you ate junk food, and is messing with you in this little weird way that you then project onto whatever is going on. And I think that's definitely a point. I mean, heck, in my life, I've gotten into big pointless arguments with, my girlfriend because everyone's been through this, but I think it's good to catch yourself. You'll be like, no, this is important to me. You're like trying to change this aspect of who I am. And then at the end, you'll be like, I was just hungry. I'm sorry we fought for an hour.
Yeah.
Same,
such a thing.
There's a line in here where she says, where it cuts to them in the basement saying, oh shit, she's out of happy juice. It cuts to her upstairs being hysterically depressed. And then they give her a little juice and she's happy again. And someone walks in the room and they say, how are you feeling today? And she says, I was very depressed, but now that you're visiting, I could sing. I feel great because of your presence. No, you feel great because of the drugs they pumped into your cerebral cortex.
Yeah.
You're interpreting it as you like this person who came in the room. And we do shit like that all the time in our lives.
But at Fortitude, the play, or I guess short movie, it moves into a point where Gloria tries to sneak a gun to Sylvia so she can kill herself. It turns out that Sylvia's apparatus has been constructed so that she's physically unable to point a gun at herself to kill herself. And you also find out that it wasn't clear to me from it whether it's because he loves the science of it or loves her, but Dr. Frankenstein has fallen in love with Sylvia. It's either through the process of building her every part of her body and studying for years.
Dr. Little, it turns out, who ostensibly is there to tour the facility, is actually also there to try and help her commit suicide.
Yeah.
Because she wrote him a very heartrending letter saying, they're keeping me here, I'm a prisoner, please help me out of this hellhole. And it turns out every couple months she does that. Like, she'll write someone a letter trying to get him. And so it's funny, they find out that he's secretly trying to kill her, and they're like, ha! You don't get it. People try to kill her all the time. We made it so she can't even kill herself. Forget it. And he just fires Gloria and goes like, haha, now I got you fired and you're going to go to jail. But he feels no sense of fear that anything bad will happen. It's a foolproof system.
Yeah, there's no way to break it, he says. And then at the end of it, we find out that it's also a system with two whole apparatuses set up, where Dr. Frankenstein, if Sylvia is into it, it can become the other head in it, and the two of them can be connected, he says, more than any people ever have, because they're sharing a heart and a lungs and all these other mechanical organs.
Parts of their mind, they imply, too. Yeah, basically everyone's asking the question of what is love, because Gloria says, I love her, she's my friend, she's being kept alive on a machine, she wants to die, I want to kill her because she's my friend and I love her. And the guy's like, no, I love her because just when she gets a little depressed, I don't kill her. I want her to live a long, full, happy life for thousands of years. I love her. Fuck you. I love her so much, in fact, when I die, I'm going to have myself grafted onto her body machine. To which Sylvia, the lady who's the head, replies, really? Like, you love me like that? Like, you would want this life of just being a head? And he goes, sure I would. And she goes, okay then. And she shoots him 12 times in the body with the pistol Gloria gave her, because she can't kill herself, but she can shoot the gun.
Right.
So then it cuts to, he is a head, sure enough. They're side-by-side heads, and they're both really happy.
Right, really happy,
creepy.
But also probably just chemically that way.
Well, you're right. It's very clear. Well,
dark ending kind of thing.
Tom Swift or whatever. John Swift?
Tom Swift.
Tom Swift. So it's not a Jonathan Swift reference, I guess. But
no, but Tom Swift is a character in like young boys fiction from.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he pumps them full of drugs to wake them up and be happy. And sure enough, they wake up and they look at each other and they seem happy and in love. And it's a happy ending / creepy ending. It's very Twilight Zone-y. It's cool.
Yeah, which is great.
Because it comes down to your interpretation. If you think it's creepy that they're heads, then it was a creepy ending. If you think it doesn't matter, then I guess it's good. Then it's like, who am I this time? It's just a couple of crazy kids who finally get together.
Right, in their strange, weird relationship.
In their strange, weird way. Yeah, it's punch-drunk love for disembodied heads.
Yeah. Oh, I never thought of that. That's cool. Hey, let's do another segment. This is a segment called Christmas Time. Jingle, 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 jingle.
Wow, same instinct.
Yeah, right there. This is one more, it's kind of a short play, too. They call it an original playlet where it was published. This is called The Very First Christmas Morning.
I gotta get out of here.
And as all great drama does, it was run in Better Homes and Gardens in December of 1962. I know on the short story episodes we've said like, oh, you know, these magazines that you think are just Cosmo now or whatever, they actually used to run amazing, great short fiction. I'm pretty sure Better Homes and Gardens didn't.
It's always been what it is.
I think it's always just been about the homes and the gardens.
So this was always a fluff piece. Right. It wasn't like, you know, Lincoln Republicans are not like what you think of it. No, it was Better Homes and Gardens. He wrote this shitty 500-word, basically, article about isn't Christmas cute?
Yeah.
To get a paycheck, I have to imagine, from Better Homes and Gardens.
Yeah, well, because December 1962, that puts it between Mother Night and Cat's Cradle, and so Kurt was at a point where the short story market had dried up, He also was writing novels, but they weren't commercially hitting in a way where he could live on them. He hadn't even done Cat's Cradle yet. So other than people who were Sirens of Titan super fans, he didn't really have a big fan base going on. And so he also was right when he was trying to put all of his 3 kids and 3 adopted kids into college, and there he had a lot of financial pressure. And I don't know, there's not like a letter I've read where he says, I wrote this playlet for money, but he probably wrote this playlet for money.
Sure, yeah.
And it's
synopsize it.
December 1962. It is a Christmas thing, and it's a pretty straightforward approach to giving your group of children in your house something to perform.
Hey, let's grade it. F. Vonnegrades. That segment's over. Some spoiled kids become not spoiled because Jesus is born.
Yeah, we don't need to. The very simple plot is there's a kid named Joel whose father owns the inn that Joseph and Mary and the baby Jesus are staying in. I'm just going to assume you know the very basic story of the Nativity, and you can look it up if you need to for plot purposes.
Admit it, Alex. You've been waiting for a chance to dig deep into the New Testament. I know that's your jam.
Talk to you guys about some good news. So one kid plays Joel, and then 4 other kids play the spoiled children of a rich merchant, and then all the other kids you got around play other angels who'll just crowd them, and it'll be like a nice little thing to do in your living room or rec room or church basement or wherever you're doing it.
I just thought since it was Vonnegut, it would be a cute little Christmas pageant, but the message would somehow be sardonic, undermining Christmas, or at least deeply insightful. But the message is really just, wasn't this a cute thing for your kids to do at Christmas?
Yeah, and like the idea
they eat
is,
all the food. There's only so much food.
Yeah.
There's only a little food for breakfast. They get up early and they're going to eat it all.
Right, there's like one piece, and so...
An angel says, don't eat it all, give it to Jesus because he's been born. And it's better to give Jesus the food. Right. Because Jesus is going to save you from your sins. Wouldn't you rather have that than the food? And they go, oh, you're right. And they give Jesus the bread.
Yeah, and so there's one prop piece of bread, and
Amen,
the kids
hallelujah.
ritually each take a chunk of it and then say, no, I'm putting this back. And then whichever kid you have playing the archangel just picks up this wad of bread, takes it out of the room.
Takes it to go. You hear him off camera go, hey, Jesus, you like bread balls?
That would have been great.
We got a bottomless basket of bread.
No carbs, no carbs. That's the baby Jesus, apparently.
And he said unto them, I'm watching my carbs.
I'm watching my carbs. And so then the angel comes back and says, oh, you were nice, you get all this. It's kind of a nice, but also you brought up very interestingly before that at the beginning of this play, the kids say direct to audience, hi, Merry Christmas, I'm playing this character is like this. And that's, even in this very tossed off money grab of a little Christmas playlet, he's still doing that Vonnegut thing of my characters directly tell you what's going on. I would as a narrator in a novel, but since it's a play, the characters will just tell you.
That is Vonnegut-y. I would say it's the only Vonnegut-y thing. Like, there's not even a single Kurt blurt because he doesn't write, there's no jokes or like the clever turns of phrase. The lines are like, we shouldn't be selfish because it's not what Jesus would want. Like, that's so un-Kurt to me.
There is one of the, within the self-descriptions.
He says we shouldn't be selfish. That is true, but.
Well, yeah, and within the self-descriptions, the spoiled children of the merchant literally say, in this play, we are the 4 spoiled children of a merchant. Yeah. So, like, there is kind of the thing, and it might just be because you want to make kids feel good, but the thing of, like, couching all the characters in, I know I'm a person playing a villainous person.
Right.
And also they'll turn out to be nice. Don't worry about it. Like, there's a humanist positive thing there. But it might just be those children's goofing around, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah. And if you have kids, I implore you, set up the old iPad or Surface or whatever. Boy. Film them reenacting this. Send it to us.
And you can. It's also, if you just like old magazine stuff, if you go to facebook.com/Kurt Vonneguys, we have a post about all the plays we're talking about in this episode, and there's no way you can find Better Homes and Gardens from 62, so we uploaded a PDF that
that'll be in footnotes,
multiple Vonne friends pointed out, and it should be in the footnotes too. It'll be in the footnotes. So if you want to see the play and check it out, it's got like the old ads.
Not
and,
just
like,
the play, it's also got a really creepy raisin ad for raisins. It's got a good ad for artificial sweetener featuring a woman in a house dress exhaustedly leaning against her vacuum cleaner, but it's okay because now she can have artificial sweeteners and she won't get so fat that her husband is disgusted by her when he comes home from the factory. Right.
It's like a life insurance ad. Yeah, it's great. It's old stuff.
Oh yeah, 3 generations of protection. I remember that ad.
Oh wow, it really worked.
It did. I have a good memory for ads from the 60s.
Yeah. And those are the plays we're talking about today.
But seriously, I mean,
feel
just film your kids wadding up some bread and send it to us. That's what we want to see in our inbox. Anything you can get to us, we'd really appreciate.
Waste some food.
Yeah,
It's all right.
it's the very first Christmas morning challenge where you wad up bread on camera to help no one in particular.
Yeah. And I think we will not be drawing on that play in this segment, but let's do a segment called Kurt Blurt.
Jing, 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 jing. Merry Christmas. All these blurts will be from Christmas morning.
Nope, not likely. This is where we, if you've never heard the show before, pull out just favorite turns of phrase and things from
Whip 'em out.
things we've read. And I feel like we'll primarily be drawing on good old Happy Birthday, Wanda June, because that's the main meat of this stuff.
Do you have any fortitudes?
I have a bit of
we're good?
fortitude. I
Okay.
think. Yeah. Let's do fortitude right now.
Sure, we'll get those out of the way. Go for it.
There's one part where they're criticizing Dr. Frankenstein for how he's handled this woman who he turned into a head on a stick. And he says, "How can you call her dead? She reads the Ladies' Home Journal."
Yeah.
It's a pretty good joke. like that's the thing he pulls. For,
Also, hey, you knew my name was Dr. Frankenstein when you hired me for this project. Like, wake up, people.
That would have been, yeah.
I feel like it would be hard to land that job just if your name was unfortunately Frankenstein.
Reading this play made me go back and I didn't have time to rewatch the movie, but just read a Young Frankenstein plot synopsis to remember my favorite jokes from that Mel Brooks movie. It's just great. Yeah.
Well, it's got to be.
That was the first one.
Damn Your Eyes is my favorite. Too late. And wait, what's the?
Oh, put the candle back.
That's it. Yeah, put the candle back. Oh, let's just do a podcast where we watch that movie.
Just repeat Young Frankenstein.
Yeah, I just think it's funny that gun control in America. Yeah. Start commenting, you assholes. This cracked is SJW bullshit.
Please do comment.
But I thought it was funny that at least in liberal quarters, gun control in America was already an issue. Enough for him to include the line. We're like, "Where'd you get a pistol?" Gloria, who smuggled the pistol in, and she's like, "Oh, it was really easy. I could have had a bazooka if I wanted one. They're $14.98." It's like, I didn't know that gun show loopholes was even a problem back then.
Yeah.
And yes, please email me and explain how gun show loopholes are not a problem. I'd love to hear your explanation of that.
If you can pull that off.
I have one more from Fortitude, which is her pancreas or something stops working. And everyone freaks out, but then Dr. Frankenstein just punches it, hits it like you would hit an old radiator, and it starts to pump again, and he goes, "That's more like it. Science!" That's the line. That's more like it. Science. That's more... Oh, no, he says that's more like it, and Gloria goes, "Science." Behold science.
That's very Cat's Cradle to me. Now that we know these explanations.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't help at all.
Also, if it was meant to be a short, the only line I'll knock is when they cut back from the room with the head in it to the room with all the organs.
Yeah.
And the one character who's talking to basically the only other character says, "Well, you've made the grand tour, and now here you are, back at the beginning." Yeah. Why would you say that to me? We just walked together over there and back here.
Yeah.
I just love that if it was meant to be a short film, that's a classic scripting mistake.
Right.
You don't start a scene with, "Well, here we are in the laboratory again," as you know.
Because it's written like a short film, but it really only happens two places, and it would be so easy to just make that a play.
Right. And then
you just divide the stage and
the only way I know it just says cut to so often it feels like it's got to be a movie.
Yeah. Should have finished it before you sent it to Playboy, Kurt.
But who knows? All right.
Smooth it out.
Let's June it up.
Yeah.
Let's get our magic wandas out.
There's a lot from the intro for me. And he spends the whole intro to this basically shitting on himself, telling you what a bad writer he is and how the actors saved the play.
And my edition has photos in it. It's quite difficult to shit on yourself, but there's photos of Kurt getting it done. It's nasty, man. Mine actually does have photos, but not of that.
I thought you were talking about that. Yeah.
I was.
Initially.
En route to a bit.
In the intro, the very first thing he says is, "This play is what I did when I was 47 years old, when my 6 children were no more." And
we're children really... no more. I checked. He doesn't mean they all died.
I wrote that down wrong.
He says when my 6 children were children no more.
Well, yeah, I felt like there was a death in, them moving on from his life.
It still works, but I just want our audience to know. Because, hey,
transpose a word. Oh,
I'm a huge Kurt fan, and in the Mr. Rosewater episode, I didn't realize and therefore didn't tie into how obviously important it is that he is the son of a suicide.
Yeah, same.
Right.
Yeah,
so there's stuff we don't know. So I want people to know, if you're not familiar with Kurt's life, no, his 6 kids didn't all die before him. That would be real sad.
Yeah.
That'd be some Edgar Allan Poe shit.
But I don't know. I like that in one line at the beginning, you can kind of set up, for one thing, why he's writing a play at all, and then also what it's about. And
so, yeah, I think in that same paragraph he says, and somewhere in there my father died.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah.
It's great. Still with the intro. I mean, I got a lot out of the intro too. Yeah, but this is probably the most satisfying, exciting thing I ever read Kurt write. To me personally, based on my existing relationship with the rest of his work. But he says in the intro, I had in fact written a book about everybody being right all the time, The Sirens of Titan. What? He didn't put what? The Sirens of Titan.
Ham.
Okay, yeah. So this horn. Burp, burp, burp. He's describing a Kronos and Classic Infundibulum. He says, I had written a book about everybody's being right all the time, The Sirens of Titan. I live in a Kronos and Classic Infundibulum. I feel like one of the things that I feel to be true and observe and know about life, that I am in the minority of people who feel that way, is that I can see everyone's point of view all the time. It's hard for me to not, even hateful viewpoints that I don't agree with, I instinctually start to parse, well, what forces in their life make them see it that way? Not that I think it's right, but why do they see it that way?
Yeah.
And there is a point of view or a vantage from which everybody's right about almost everything. Obviously, I have core beliefs. I'm not like a cipher, but you know what I mean? To a large degree, I go through life being like, yeah, man, it's hard to know anything. In the Socrates way, manner of speaking, because anything can be doubted or anything can be broken down or looked at a different way. Yeah. And I'm just like, great. Kurt felt that way too. That's so happy to me.
Yeah.
That he says, I live in a Kronos and Classic Infundibulum. It makes me feel a connection to him that I didn't feel before.
That's so great. Yeah.
So that's my favorite line in the play. And it's not in the play.
I had that too. And I really like that extra wrinkle to interpreting sirens and just reading it. It's amazing. Yeah.
And it helps confirm that the way I interpreted sirens, not that there's like a right and wrong interpretation, but is along the lines of what he felt when he was putting it in. So I'm like, it's just nice to have double confirmation. You're not a complete moron, misinterpreting it.
And it's snuck into a play. Read his plays, guys.
Yeah, dope.
It's neat.
Yeah, I'm paraphrasing what Harold says about an educated woman is like pouring honey into a fine Swiss watch. That's stolen from Kurt's own brother. And in the intro, he says, my brother once looked at a quail that our father had shot and said, gosh, it's like smashing a fine Swiss watch.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. What's better about the dead version than just looking at it fly and walk around? Why do you want the dead version?
And it's even sort of a neat way to describe, now you can see some of its guts and stuff, and that sucks. It was just nicer as a thing. Oh, there's also, within the play, Woodley has a line because they're talking about sort of the state of the world and who the enemies of America are, and Woodley says, Chinese maniacs and Russian maniacs and American maniacs and French maniacs and British maniacs have turned this lovely, moist, nourishing blue-green ball into a doomsday device.
Dope.
Yeah, really great.
Things die. All things die. My new family dissolved into the late afternoon. This is Kurt talking about the play Wrapping.
Yeah.
Isn't that awesome? As we went our separate ways out of the theater district, blue movies and peep shows offered to confirm our new solitude if we cared to drop in.
Yeah. That's
so
great
good.
stuff. Well, it's one of the few times I've ever read somebody talking about the experience of their first theatrical thing, because I did theater in high school and a little bit in college.
And you get that temporary family feeling, and you go we're going to hang out every day after this.
And then everybody's busy, and
and you're alone again.
Yeah.
Yep. War is not healthy for children and other living things. That's just a good bumper sticker.
Was that from the poster Woodley got him?
I'm trying to churn through the intro because you're already into the play, and I'm still doing intros.
Yeah. No,
but that's all my intros. Now we're into the play. Give us some play lines.
I don't think Kurt leans on it, but it stuck out to me. Penelope, when Paul's run off and he's probably in the park somewhere, there's a line where Penelope just says, the only thing I ever told him about life was keep out of the park after the sun goes down, which is now like a shorthand in my brain for I was a parent, and I think that was all I gave him. Okay. You know, or like like there it just it was
I
a
wrote
nice
in the
little
meet
thing for me.
like ask Uncle Alex to explain what that meant. So good.
Oh, perfect.
Why does she? Yeah, what's the symbology? She mentions it 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
I tried to teach him the right things. I told him not to go in the park after dark.
Yeah, well, because it's that thing of parents or kids having kids kind of thing. Like you realize, like I tried to be a good parent, and also I did not have a lot to
Of knowledge
impart.
to impart. Yeah, sure.
Shoot, I basically knew you might get robbed in Central Park at a certain late hour. Okay.
Right, but I let a 50-year-old dude force me to marry him when I was engaged and 18. So like maybe I don't know that much about what I should be doing.
That too.
Although it is good not to go to Central Park at night if you're 11 years old.
Yeah, it's probably not great, especially in 70s New York. You know.
Yeah. You got to fight from time to time to get eaten, or you'll get eaten alive. To which someone replies, I think Penelope, that's not true, or it doesn't have to be unless we make it true. Maybe Woodley.
Huh.
And then Harold
Yeah.
says, I'm not even going to say why it's timely, but I think you'll know. I just
boy.
have one more thing to say. If you elect a president, by God, you
Yeah.
support that president no matter what he does, no matter what. It's the only way you can have a country.
It's borderline out of nowhere. Like they're not even really talking about that, and he's just like, by the way, serve presidents.
It's as if Kurt knew that reading that all these years later, for many of us, that would be shorthand for, oh, this guy's an asshole. I enjoyed that.
There's a line where Paul sort of offhand says, if you're depressed, laughing doesn't help much, which I feel like is something Kurt, at least to an extent, believes. Like, I think he believes that comedy is how we deal with a lot of things and how we face a lot of things, but also there's still things, you know, like it doesn't heal it completely or anything.
All my comedian friends and everyone, but especially anyone who writes comedy, I highly recommend another podcast episode, Malcolm Gladwell's podcast, Revisionist History. Do you know what I'm
He's
about to
a
say?
competitor, buddy.
Oh no, yeah.
Any other podcast is a competitor.
They had a recent short episode called The Satire Paradox that uses numbers to try and back up how comedy is used to get points across, whether it's effective, and if it impacts the issues that it's actually aimed at. And it will change the way I write satire. Not all comedy is satire, but if you understand the difference, you know what I mean when I say sometimes I do want to write satire, and listening to this will change what my tactics are when I do that.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
So listen to it if you write satire ever.
I kind of had that epiphany end of this past year, 2016, where we were doing an end of year podcast for Cracked, and it was like, oh, pull your favorite things from the year. And one of my favorite things was Samantha Bee thing where they went through the process of trying to get an eagle mascot from the NRA, because the NRA has like an eagle mascot for kids. And they did this brilliant thing where it was like harder to get a mascot than to get guns. You know, there were more laws and went all over the country. And I was like, this is pretty much an utterly perfect piece of satire as far as this issue and how it works. And then I realized like, oh, it didn't impact anything. You know what I mean? Like it might have changed some minds of some people, but as far as immediate tangible results, it didn't matter. They just maxed out what satire could do with this, and there you go.
Yeah.
And that's been on my mind lately as a thing of like overall, are we thinking about whether satire's nailing it? Are we just doing satires that we think are funny? Or you know, like as an overall country, I'm not talking about Cracked or anybody.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah. Someone to Harold while surveying his apartment. Any one of these poor dead animals here was 1,000 times the athlete you can ever hope to be. It's a good burn for someone who thinks killing an animal with a gun makes you powerful. To be like, you know, pound for pound, that cheetah is a superhero compared to you. You just happen to have a gun, you know?
Yeah. Such a nice top-down Kurt thing, like just that perspective,
when he does go to the park, someone tells her not to worry. Penelope says, but Paul's only 12 years old. And Harold says, well, he can make the sound of human footsteps, which is a terrifying sound. That is just a great, that's a good turn of phrase.
That's really awesome. Yeah.
And I mean, it's true. I mean,
it could be anything.
If you hear footsteps in the dark, you don't be like, I bet it's just a 12-year-old.
At one point, early second act, Harold is chewing the guys out, Herb especially, and he uses one weird idiom, which is he's talking about all those Alice sit by the fires.
Oh yeah, like that's a
which
phrase.
Is such a weird, strange. Yeah. Like he definitely knew somebody named Alice who stayed by the camp on one of his trips, and he was like, this is a thing now. Everybody will get it.
When Shuttle runs in with Wanda June's cake, he goes, "They had this cake. Somebody else didn't pick it up. It says, 'Happy birthday, somebody else.'"
Yeah.
And they read it and go, "No, it says Wanda June."
Yeah. And also, and you pointed out before, but that line about we could take off
We could
the
scrape
name
it
with a
off.
butter knife
We
is
could
just
scrape it off.
a really funny moment to me.
I'll eat the frosting, the excess frosting. Loose leaf in awe of how things have changed.
Yeah.
First of all, he often says it's a bitch when like saying, I compare it very much to So It Goes. When he's like says anything that encapsulates how there's nothing to be done, you're fucked. He just goes, yeah, it's a bitch. Yeah, I dropped that nuke on, I killed like 600,000. It's a bitch. So this one is, he goes, it's a bitch, you know? I used to be scared shitless. I'd say fuck or shit in public by accident. Now everybody says fucking shit all the time. Something very big must have happened while we were gone. And then, yeah, when he sees Playboy, he goes, something very big involving sex must have happened while we were gone. Yeah, culture shifts occur over time.
Right.
And I just love that his name is Loose Leaf Harper.
Yeah, it's
meaning a crazy person who complains. Like he's absent-minded
Right.
and he complains. That's all he does. Loose Leaf Harper.
Even just
Perfect.
feels scattered as a name. Like it's really. He also has just one line where he's thinking about his mother-in-law's death of shock at seeing him, and he just goes, "First Nagasaki, now this."
That's maybe the best laugh line in the whole thing.
Funniest joke in the whole thing.
Yeah. What happened? I went home and she had a heart attack and died. Yeah. First Nagasaki, now this. Can you pass the fucking ketchup? The new heroism is to put a village idiot into a pressure cooker, seal it up tight, and shoot him at the moon.
Yeah.
That's
Harold complaining about the space program.
Writing off astronauts as like idiotic cowards. Like that it doesn't take any bravery to go to space. We just put an idiot in a pressure cooker and fling him at the moon. I shot a bullet at an animal. I'm way better. Also reminded me of the great Onion headline from their book Our Dumb Century. Holy shit, man walks on fucking moon.
Yeah. It's a great thing. Yeah. And him talking about astronaut, it really felt like I don't know if Kurt is always super successful in this play at lampooning the Hemingway kind of thing. Like I think sometimes he's just sort of presenting it without totally making fun of it to another degree. But that astronaut thing was like a perfect Colbert-ish kind of character perspective.
Oh,
it's like, oh, this guy's an idiot because he thinks this. Like,
I'm really going down a bad road here. But yeah, it's like telling John McCain he's not a war hero because he got captured. It's like a big tip-off of like, even if you like the person I'm referencing, it's like, you shouldn't have said that, though. Right. I think almost everyone says you shouldn't have said that. Don't say John Glenn's a coward. Come on, Harold.
POWs are still brave.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how to say it. When he abducts Penelope from her job as a waitress, when he orders his meal, when she rides up, he says, raw hamburger, please. A whole onion. I want to eat the onion like an apple. Do you understand? That's his pickup line. And I had to call it up because until I started dating, I ate onions like apples.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Onions are delicious.
Yeah. And from like
super underrated.
8 to 13, I ate onions like apples occasionally. I didn't know that you weren't supposed to eat a lot of it. I really liked them.
Yeah, actually, when I read him doing that, I didn't really bump on it. I was like, that'd be pretty good.
Raw hamburger, though. That's a different story.
Right,
yeah.
He also orders that at the burger place. There's also there's a Penelope line where she's speaking about Odysseus type heroes specifically, and she says, heroes basically hate home and never stay there very long and make awful messes while they're there. Which was like just a good little encapsulation of like most heroes in things, but especially Odyssey type stories. Like, it's like that one recent Daniel Craig Bond movie where you see his apartment and it's like not even set up. And it's like, oh right, he's this drunk sad spy. He probably hasn't like set up his apartment. That makes sense.
Chow chow chow. God damn it, nutriment. Sorry, you need some context.
Yeah.
Harold comes home, and the first thing he tells is Penelope, my friends are here. Go make us a giant feast, because I'm home.
Right.
And she goes, well, this is all happening so fast. What are my feelings? Well, there's people in my life now. And he just goes, chow, 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 nutriment. Like, feed us.
Mom, we want the meatloaf, and
Do
we
not
want
understand.
It now.
Yeah. And then he tells Paul, I'm going to have sex with your mother. Go outside and get some exercise. What kind of exercise, Father? I don't know. Beat the shit out of someone that hates you. That's his
So
advice to his son. Watch a movie. Beat the shit out of a minority. I don't care.
Loose Leaf has a moment late in the play, and it's one of the better parts where he's thinking about the ramifications of Nagasaki, like he's finally facing it for some reason. And he says to himself, I could have been the father of all those people in Nagasaki, and the mother too, just by not dropping the bomb.
So,
which is a cool realization that like in a practical sense, being a parent is bringing life into the world, but also if you just don't take a bunch of lives out of the world,
that's in your power to take.
You're bringing life into the world too, in a way. It's a really cool
maintenance at the very least.
Perspective. Yeah,
man. Loose Leaf never seems to understand the import of what he did, but there's subtle clues that of course he does.
Right.
He can't face it. His brain's broken now. But once in a while it'll peek through. And another one I like along those lines is someone says, well, you're the smartest guy I know or whatever. And he goes, I don't know anybody who'd drop an atom bomb on a city is pretty dumb. So he obviously regrets. Like it's obviously not like he's not Harold. He doesn't be like, I have a high score. I killed more people than anyone. I'm great. Yeah. Right. Shuttle yells, Bull Dicky. I don't remember that. I'm now playing Make Me Laugh with Alex. That old comedy. I'm just going to yell crazy quotes from this at you and see if you laugh.
What did Bull Dicky mean?
Shuttle finds out that Harold doesn't like him or admire him. And he goes, I feel like I could just shout. I could just yell something. Bull Dicky. Don't know what that means.
Yeah, I feel like that joke probably didn't land in the performances. It's, at least some audience members were like, why is it what? But I don't know, maybe you nailed it. I don't know.
I think a great symbol moment, when Harold comes home for the first time, he wanders around looking at things silently. One of the first things he does is take a sword off the wall, standard symbol for violence, and just looks at it and says, home, which is like, dope. You get everything about him that you need to know.
Yeah, right away.
Harold says to Loose Leaf, looking at all the dead animals, you know, this room is full of ghosts. And Loose Leaf says, you're lucky. My house is going to be filled with people. When he super doesn't want to go home and face his wife, who's going to be like, where have you been for 12 years? You were supposed to come back with milk and shit.
It reminded me of that Simpsons thing where Kirk Van Houten's like alone now and he has the race car bed. And Homer's like, I'm going to sleep in my big bed with my wife.
Oh, yeah, I sleep in a race car. Where do you sleep? Big bed with my wife. Classic. If we're comparing it to more modern media, he says to Penelope, Harold does when he's wooing her for all of 45 seconds.
Yeah.
You're a springbox, an oryx, a gemsbok, a gazelle.
Yeah.
And I couldn't help but think of my favorite Coen Brothers movie, Hudsucker Proxy, which has what I believe to be the most romantic kiss scene ever when he calls Jennifer Jason Leigh a gazelle and then nuzzles her. Fucking great. Just watch Hudsucker Proxy. I only bring it up at every opportunity because I still know people who understand how great the Coens are but have not seen Hudsucker Proxy. And you're a fool if you haven't.
I'm a fool.
You're a fool. Yeah. We'll get there. We'll watch it off mic.
That would be great. Oh, there's one more Harold thing where they're late in the play, they're telling him to cut out what he's doing, and I think Penelope says, he's a child, and his response is, with an iron penis 3 feet long.
I already have that one, yeah.
such a ridiculous...
It's like, okay, all right. You called me daughter when you were trying to get me to marry you. Now you're talking about your kid's rock-hard steel rod. You have some issues, Harold.
Especially bringing up anything penis-related around an 11-year-old boy.
Yeah.
Their immediate reaction is going to be to, like, shrink into the wall.
Yeah, and also,
no, I'm not here.
Raising a rifle. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm going to shoot you. No, you're not. You're going to jizz on me with your steel penis. That's what you're doing. And I love it.
Oh, Dad. No.
Dad, you're ruining my murder of you. My self-defense murder of you. I love Koenigswald in Heaven says, oh, by the way, we should say, the reason Hitler's in heaven is, in this universe, everyone goes to heaven. Kurt's not saying Hitler's good.
Yeah, everyone ends up there.
In this model, in this pocket universe, when you die, you get forgiven of your sins and you become a good person automatically. You understand what you did was wrong. If you were wrong, you go to heaven. Everyone gets in.
Right.
So von Koenigswald says, even though, and they also say, if anyone ever murders you, you should be really happy. Heaven's great. Everyone loves it because you automatically get in, blah, blah, blah. So von Koenigswald says, once you're dead, you realize the stigma of murder shouldn't be there because dying's fine. So even though, I'm sad for the suffering I caused, obviously I'm not a Nazi in heaven, I do kind of wish I got more credit because, Harold's down there taking credit for how many people he murdered. I murdered way more. And I did it the hard way. He's like, I never used a gun. I killed all kinds of people with knives and like in gory with surgery and like gross, evil shit. This is where the quote starts. I think there should be a little star or something next to the names of the guys who did it the hard way. Like on his Wikipedia entry, he wants an asterisk to say, note, he killed people with his bare hands or whatever. And I just think it's so ironic that a Nazi would want a star to single out their identity as a murderer.
Dark irony.
Like, I want that. I mean, that's intentional, obviously, but I loved it.
We should label me with some
Now
kind
that
of...
I'm dead, I want a clear identifying star to show that I was a Nazi in life.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Harold says to Woodley, the quote-unquote, like, weak, peaceful man, who is weak because he likes peace. Woodley says... You're going to have to get used to us, you, the old heroes. The old heroes are going to have to get used to the new heroes who will refuse to fight. We won't fight. And he says, we, the editorial we, everything about you is the editorial we. Take that away from you and you disappear.
Yeah.
I don't agree with Harold, but that's a cool burn. It's a good burn.
Yeah. Another Harold Woodley back and forth. Harold asked Woodley, what brought you back? Because Woodley comes back to the apartment toward the end. And Woodley says... The same hairy, humorless old gods who move you from hither to yon. Honor, if you like.
Yeah.
Just a really great, like, all these thousands of years of Heralds and Odysseus's, they're all just doing that.
Yeah.
And we all have at least a little of it if we're doing something bold and maybe stupid.
There's no piece on the board labeled enemy and you're confused.
Oh,
to Harold being like, it's Hurt Locker. You're home from the war now,
right?
And you're abusing your wife and son because you're only used to interfacing in that way.
Right.
You have no more enemies. At the end, he says, like, Woodley, let's just do what we should have done this whole time. I'll fight you for my wife. Can we fight? No. Do you not understand? We don't do that. And he says, but it's how you solve things. It's man to man. And he says, it's healer to killer. Is that the same thing?
Yeah.
Because he's a doctor.
Yeah.
Good line. Good burn.
Yeah, and this actually, it's either after that or around when they're talking about what the heroes will be. Harold says, oh, I'm to be left behind in primordial ooze. And Woodley says, if you're at home in the ooze and nowhere else. Which is a great, like, you could just change, man. You could stop being an asshole.
And then when he's threatening to murder someone, the person says, shall I beg for mercy on my knees? He says, I'm about to shoot you in the head. And he says, if you want him to find your body that way. Oh, just good dialogue. That one, I was like taken back to Miller's Crossing. Do you know that scene?
Oh, that was so good. Yeah.
If you want to be found that way. There's a line, speaking of movie tie-ins, oh, I'm comical to you. And I just wanted to add, what am I, some kind of clown to you? And then he beats them to death with a baseball bat.
Right. And then the Rolling Stones play.
Exactly. Harold says, I am man as man was meant to be, a vengeful ape who murders for fun. He will soon be extinct. It's time. Or someone describes Harold that way. I can't remember if he's describing himself, but obviously that's a description of Harold. And then the other description of Harold I got out of it that I love the most, that I think really sums up both sides of the equation, is someone calls him, you're a living fossil, like cockroaches and horseshoe crabs. And he says, yeah, we do survive, don't we? You might not like cockroaches, but yeah. You might not like murderers, but I bet they're still here in 1,000 years. Sorry.
Yeah.
Probably won't get rid of all of them.
Right. It's like he's threatening the future itself.
Exactly.
Like,
I love that.
Yeah. Are those the blurts?
That's all the blurts, man.
Nice. Yeah, it's a play. It's very blurty. Like that. I think it's not unknown to be such a blurty thing, but it's all dialogue. It's all, it's got
I figured blurts would be the biggest section here because I mean in a straight dialogue book or play, what else is there?
Right.
All people are doing is blurting at each other.
And actually, speaking of books, let's go into a segment called Recurring Characters Update. Ding, 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 ding.
I need updates, immediate updates from the Eastern Seaboard.
What's your position?
Left of the right side, and then there's a current character. Over and out.
That's our best one of those.
That's our best one ever.
This one, it doesn't have many. Colonel Looseleaf Harper will come up again in what's going to be our next episode, Breakfast of Champions. He's briefly a charter airplane pilot. So he just has like other paid pilot work in another Kurt book. And then this play has Major Siegfried von Königswald, who is a member of the Nazi SS. And then Cat's Cradle had a guy named Dr. Schlichter von Königswald, who is a doctor in the mission on
serving the Monzano family.
right,
Yeah.
on San Lorenzo. And so it's not quite the same name, but they're both almost exactly the same name Nazi SS guys who are now in other contexts. So that's pretty close to a recurring character, about as close to I almost feel like he lost track of exactly what the name was and just messed it up, you know? But those are the recurring characters. And we also, we often...
That was shorter than the segment intro.
Yeah, it really, that's it. Well, you know, we track them, but they don't crop up a lot in this. And also, and I feel like it's another product of it being a play. It just doesn't have 100 characters. It's going to be this set of people, and most of them are the Ryan family. And also, we usually do this segment, and I think we can do a little bit of a Kurt cameo segment.
Can you
Kurt
spot
cameo.
him?
Kurt cameo.
Can anyone in the class
Kurt
spot
cameo.
him? Can anyone tell me where Kurt
cameo.
is in this picture?
Here.
Thank you, Jessica.
I'm Jessica. Great. It is sort of the odd play where there's a huge intro by the author that kind of helps you understand it. And then also I feel like aspects of Loose Leaf, I would argue, are the cameo by Kurt. I feel like especially whenever he writes a tall, skinny guy who is a little bit unsure of his war experiences, which is what Loose Leaf is.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of him putting himself in the novel, or in this case, play, as indirectly as he wants.
He's pretty comically dumb, which
Yeah.
is why that didn't scan for me. But I see it if you're looking not at that aspect of the character, every other aspect, yeah. And he
Yeah.
says the lines that are what Kurt thinks.
Yeah, he's got a lot of them. And there's also, he's, I would say, not entirely necessary to the movement of the plot. Like, you could kind of
No.
do this show without him, but he's there because I think Kurt likes him being there.
I know Odysseus had a group of guys. Was there like a standout buddy henchman for Odysseus in the Odyssey?
Oh, now I'm trying to
Sure,
remember.
someone online will remember and let
Yeah.
us know.
I don't think
But I don't
quite
think so.
this way.
I think they were
Yeah.
just like, he had his group with him, and they were just like a mass of dudes on the ship with him.
Yeah, and you're right, and a lot of them get eaten by monsters and
Very,
stuff.
well, I know
Yeah.
when he gets home, I think he's alone. Like, he's
I
the
think so,
last
yeah.
one left, yeah.
So this one has a bumbling Kurt pilot going along. And then we're booming through segments.
That was a brace
We're
of
just- we're
segments
going
real
for it.
fast, yeah.
And this next segment is called Vanna What?
Finally!
Vanna Who?
Finally, we're going to hold this guy accountable.
Yeah, because this is a segment, if you've never heard the show before, where we pick out things that maybe are objectionable or not great or surprising to modern audiences from Kurt's work. Not even necessarily to judge them, you know, just to find them and say, hey, this is it.
We all have implicit biases, I believe, and
Yep.
you check them not because you hate the thing that you're analyzing, but in order to have a clear view of what is going on in the world and what
Yeah.
you think.
Yeah.
The truth is like the dark. It scares you witless, but in time, you see things clear and stark.
Holy cow.
I just made that up off the top of my head.
That's
That's an
pretty
Elvis Costello line. Sorry.
And I think in this play, the big one is the entire Harold Ryan character is definitely something that Kurt wants to satirize and mock
Right.
and take down.
It's hard to sift through.
He
'cause
really
you-
goes over the top with it.
But you know he doesn't mean those things, just the opposite.
Right.
Yeah. I try to be aware, it's very important to be aware of what a writer is using for effect, and then the parts that you think, oh, I think they are building that message.
Yeah.
Some of the shit Harold Ryan says, we're not going to say because it's obviously a Vonnegut to drop the N-word, but that's how he's using it.
Right.
You're supposed to hate Harold Ryan, so I wouldn't call that a what so much.
Yeah, I think everything Harold Ryan says is something that Kurt, the author,
That is
does not
offensive,
believe
yeah.
and believes is offensive. At the same time, I think just like pure writing technique, I think he overdoes it. Like I think he
Sure.
could have ramped it down a little bit, even for audiences then, and it would have still come across.
Well, the quote in question that you didn't say is, "You're a woman, aren't you? Then we have a cook. Cook, by God. You're the N-word now."
Right.
Oh, man.
Right. And he's
Our podcast just got canceled.
yeah, he's like accidentally quoting a John Lennon song that will exist about women in the world. And that's So there's a lot of that in this play, and it's there.
Yeah.
Because I did think throughout this, like, he wants to satirize this Hemingway perspective and also just an overall aggressive male perspective that's out there. I think some of the time he's really nailing making fun of it, and other times he's just presenting it without following it up with enough jokes or craft or skill to make it like interesting.
Yeah.
You know, it's just there and it's bald and it's.
But he's
rough.
everything. He's racist. He's homophobic. All the things you'd expect from Harold.
Yeah, doesn't believe in consent.
Yeah,
pretty much.
he says you don't. She says I don't want to have sex right now. You don't know you want it. That's how you're built.
Right.
And then his first wife in heaven says, he would come home and he would tell me that he had just killed something and he had now earned the reward that only a woman could give him, and then he'd tear off my clothes. He would carry me into the bedroom telling me to scream and kick. That was very important to him. I did it. I tried to be a good wife. I was like, that is a chilling description of raping your wife.
Yep.
Like, that is rough, man.
Yeah.
They say, what are you going to do now after Penelope leaves him? I don't know, marry the first whore who's nice to me, I guess.
Right.
Jesus.
Like, dude.
I can stop because these aren't real Vonneguts because he doesn't mean them. But yeah, you're right. He goes over the top. I also thought it was a legitimate Vonnegut that, as usual, Penelope could have been more fleshed out.
Yeah.
But the real Penelope in the Odyssey is not that fleshed out. But neither is Odysseus, really.
Yeah, that's right. And there is one little bit where in a stage direction, Penelope comes back out of her room dressed for a date with, I think it was, she's going out with Herb. And Kurt says in the description that she's wearing barbaric jewelry, which is actually is something he says in the short story Miss Temptation, too, about the female character jewelry. But I was like, that's a little bit weird and gross.
And, well,
it's in
that, it's interesting in that same across the page, he gives her, oh, you mean like characterizing jewelry as a tool women use to hit men over the head and take them into their caves or whatever.
And that any kind of jewelry would be barbaric.
Right.
And like, there's just some weirdness to it.
It's weird. Yeah. And I also thought the fact that there is a moment, I didn't write the quote down, but there's a moment in the across the page where she's given depth. Like where you get an insight into her thought process and it's sophisticated. And it's the only time because she's fairly straightforward and simple-minded throughout the play. And I just thought it was kind of a Vonnegut that's like, you couldn't reveal that in a line. It's almost like it was an across the page that gives the actress performing the role enough to know your character is not completely hollow. You do have thoughts and understand what's going on.
Right.
But it's all on your performance. It's only in your eyes and stuff. Like they didn't give her any lines where she comes off as comprehending what's going on, really.
Yeah.
All she does is finally realize that it would be nice to not be abused, so she goes away from her abusive husband. But she doesn't have, like, it takes Dr. Woodley, a man who's a physician, to come in and be like, let me explain. You represent an old way of interfacing the world through violence that is becoming moot.
Right.
You could have let Penelope know that and explain that, but...
Yeah, I think she explains some things, I think, pretty effectively.
I'd just say it's classic Vonnegut pitfall, and pitfall of any male writer in the 50s and 60s is she's a little undercolored.
Right, yeah.
This is just this is not a Vonnegut because it's just an offensive thing Harold says. But again, even when he's being a monster, I think Vonnegut has good turns of phrase that are objectively good, even though the sentiment is horrible.
Right. Yeah, he writes
He touches his wife and he says, this is no good. For you see, ideally, the body of a woman should feel like a hot water bottle filled with Devonshire cream. You feel like a paper bag crammed with curtain rods. Oh, boy. And as you pointed out, I just think there's such colorful turns of phrase. Don't lecture me on race relations. I've killed every kind of man and fucked every kind of woman, blah, blah, blah. But you didn't say the end of that monologue is, you know, if I'd been to the South Pole, I bet there'd be a lot of penguins around who look like me. You gonna fuck all the penguins? What kind of brag is that? You're gonna go to this and fuck all the penguins. Okay. Bizarre.
Yeah.
And then the last, you're hollow like a woman. But the last thing I'll say that I actually thought was a legit where I was like, oh, Curdy, was the blue soup they drink that made them just two more sleepy Indians. Just the characterization of native peoples as like sitting in their hut with a drum, chilling out in the sun.
Yeah.
And we've come to learn that that's a problematic characterization of people going through dire poverty. It's like they just chill out in the sun. The world. They love fishing. Nah, it's kind of rough being an Indian in most parts of the world.
Yeah, and claiming any culture is lazy is horribly
just
racist.
rough. Although blue soup is cool. Some Star Wars vibe there. They describe that they subsisted entirely on this pale blue soup that is just
it's like, on Tatooine?
Is never explained. Yeah. Were you at a moisture farm? Do you know why in both there's 3 acts, and at the end of Act 1 and the end of Act 2, Harold turns to the audience and says, end of Act 1. End of Act 2. Do you know what'd you get out of that?
I think he's trying to do just a little bit of a Brechtian thing. Like, well, he does at the beginning where they are just presentational about this is what the play is about, this is who I am. I almost feel like Kurt realized, I only really do that at the very beginning. I guess if I do it at the end of acts now, it feels like it's a style and not just being lazy.
Speaking of which, you're going to hear pages flip because I have a real book this time. Does he say I missed to someone or to the audience? Harold enters from the corridor shaking his head. I missed. That's all. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Probably director's choice, actually.
Yeah.
Because that'd be like a big thing to
totally see
decide
him
as a director. Yeah.
just walking slowly all the way out to center stage as if he's going to take a bow, but looking at the audience and saying, I missed,
And then just that Porky Pig Looney Tunes thing.
Or directing the camera and then a Looney Tunes thing. And then another gunshot once everything's obscured.
Yeah. Well, actually, speaking of it being a play, I think we can go into another segment called The Meat.
What does that have to do with speaking of a play?
I think we talked about a lot of the meat of this already. I do, in general, I'm a Kurt fan. I feel like there's an overall question of, are his plays relevant?
Sure.
Or were they useful to his progression as an artist?
I'm not questioning that. I'm questioning your segue. You said, speaking of it's a play, here comes the meat.
Yeah, it wasn't
Explain
smooth.
the link. Okay, then we explain the sausage link.
Tough piece of meat. Ooh, hey, there we go. But I do, not only is, I think, this play a relatively worthwhile piece of Kurt writing, but also in reading his letters and tracking his progression, he does a lot of telling people that he's going to be a playwright, or like he'll do a bunch of work on a novel or on short stories and then be like, I'm just going to go write plays now. And I think if nothing else, he did it because he wasn't necessarily very productive as a playwright. This Wanda June is pretty much the main play we have from him, but it seems like it was very productive in terms of giving him a mental break from novels in order to then get back at them fresh, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's pretty much
accepted.
It's basically just me doing a small speech, I guess, is the segment. But were there any other meat things you wanted to...
I have questions for you, because I'm always interested in your take on stuff.
Yeah.
Did you have a theory for the Woody Woodpecker bit? So for people who didn't read it, there's several blackouts in the play at various instances where the across the pages, then we hear Woody Woodpecker go, ha, 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 ha. And there's even one, and it develops in the middle, before the final scene, there's a blackout where it says, we hear Woody Woodpecker.
Right.
Then there's silence. Then a baby cries. Then more silence. Then Woody Woodpecker and a gunshot, implying someone shot Woody Woodpecker, I guess. Then the scene starts.
Yeah, I was totally confounded by it.
Oh, okay.
I don't. Well, also,
as
I don't
a pop
know,
culture reference, I don't know what I'm supposed to get out of it.
Yeah, I don't know Woody Woodpecker cartoons. Other than what he looks like and that one catchphrase, I don't know anything about him. I don't know what his deal is as a character. But also, it made no sense to me as a part of the play. I just skipped them mentally.
Then I guess I'm only bringing it up as an open question because I would love. If anyone, people who read along, if anyone has a theory, post that shit. Facebook / Kurt Vonneguys.
Yeah, because you guys have supplied many very useful or awesome theories about things, and one of you probably gets it, but I have no idea what the Woody Woodpecker stuff is for.
Similar question I will throw at you and at the audience as well if you don't give me the answer I seek. Why is the title of the play Happy Birthday, Wanda June? What does the cake symbolize, and why make it so central that it's the title? Or what's going on there?
Yeah, well, I think it symbolizes something that is more of an overall Kurt theme that the play isn't really otherwise about sort of the randomness of life, how tragedy will come out of nowhere, and how we need to kind of celebrate what we can. Oh, I guess, we do have a cake like that. At least that was a thing. But the rest of the play isn't about that. So it feels like kind of a stray...
Something about scraping our name off. You're taking something meant to celebrate a continuing life. That life was snuffed out. And then you're stem selling it by taking off any factors that make it clearly associated to that person.
Oh, yeah.
And celebrating someone else's life. I don't know. I feel like there's some commentary in there that I'm still not fully getting.
Yeah, it might be. It almost felt like a hi-ho or something.
Yeah.
And it's also probably the most fun thing you could call a play of all the elements of it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the play would just be Harold the Monster or, whatever. I don't know. It doesn't sound like a great show.
Homecoming, something, yeah.
Yeah, but it actually, I had read this once before a long time ago, and I remember the first time I read it, I felt like Wanda June was really random. And I'd even have trouble in my mind tracking that this was the play about what it's about, because there's also this Wanda June title.
Yeah, the title is like a Radiohead song title. It's not immediately intuitively clear which one you're like, oh yeah, the one with the guy, the hunter guy.
Yeah, but but she worked a lot better for me this time around. I don't know why. I think maybe it just like stitched the overall progression of the show together better for me, or the themes or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was fine with it. Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, and yeah, you guys might have something else too. But I don't know. Maybe
I'm sure
it's
they do.
just the gag of her being like the foul bachelor frog kind of guy, where he's like, "Oh, just scrape it off and then it's a cake."
Yeah.
You know, then I got it. You know.
And also, Kurt, by his own admission, some of the stuff maybe he would have changed if he lived longer or revisited it, because a lot of the decisions shifted over and over and over. I thought in the intro it was amazing. He says he like pours the praise onto Michael J. Caine, who helped him with the play, for all of his good advice about how to write a play and how plays and stories are structured.
Yeah.
This is Kurt Vonnegut. So I feel like that's super high praise. He's saying this guy helped correct me on my story structure.
Right.
I looked this guy up. His biggest credit is he wrote a few episodes of Gilligan's Island. It's just amazing to me that Vonnegut is admiring this. I think just because he's scared to leave novels and go into a new medium, and he's like, this guy is from that medium, so I trust anything you would say.
That's fascinating.
But it's like, you're Kurt goddamn Vonnegut. Like, if you don't like the traditional rules of playwriting, invent new ones. Like, you're smart and wise. I'm going to want to hear what you're going to want to say.
Yeah, yeah.
So I just think it's also cool to know that someone I look up to so much looked up to one of the Gilligan's Island writers, because it's like, everyone's just a person, man.
Well, and also I like that he probably didn't fully take that guy's advice, because there's still Kurdy structure things. In particular, characters just telling you what this is about and who they are immediately.
Well, yeah, but
that's
I thought
not something that people usually do.
The one interlude where Paul builds a radio out of coconuts to contact the Penelope at the park, I thought was like an obscure reference, you know?
Yeah, the theme song was real jammin'.
Yeah, Harold's constantly hitting people on the head with his fishing cap. I'm out of references from Gilligan's Island.
Yeah, I'm not very steeped in it. I don't know. Let's go on to another segment. This is called Kurt Vonnegrades. Graded.
Scared of the grade.
Boy, let me tell you.
I'm scared.
Also,
it's a negative grade.
If this is your first one of these, Kurt, in his own autobiographical work, Palm Sunday, gave his own writing letter grades relative to itself, and so we give him letter grades too. And he gave Happy Birthday, Wanda June a D. In this set of 13 works he graded, he only gave Happy Birthday, Wanda June and his novel Slapstick a D, and that's the lowest grade he gave anything. And in the intro of this, he talks about what a terrible writer he feels like he is on this. So it's not totally surprising, but he really savaged this thingy.
I think it must have been colored by his experience of working on it, because if you do feel the need to revise something 20 times, probably instills the thought in you that it's not your best work ever. Or if you yourself feel unsure about how it should end, and then you end up going with someone else's idea for how it should end, maybe you feel like,
definitely.
it wasn't my best, because when I thought of Sirens, I knew what was going to happen, you know?
Well, he, in his letters around the time, he says, he wrote one in March of 1971 to the writer Jose Donoso. He says, my writing is going badly. I had a play which ran for about 150 performances in New York. It was a shabby piece of work, I have decided. I wish like hell I could do something good. Like, just feels fundamentally down on himself. And also, in a lot of his own letters about all his stuff, he talks about his own reviews. And I think he's someone who, like, if he wrote for the internet today, he would read all of his comments. Mm-hmm. Like, he was the kind of creator who needed to know what the reviews and comments were on his stuff. And so I'm sure this play that was being revised while it was being performed, not even in like, previews or something, like the finished product was being fixed all the time.
Right. You
so
could come a week later and see different plot events.
Yeah.
Right. Like you could come back to the play and things would have changed.
Yeah,
that is weird.
He wrote to his friend Knox Berger at the end of 1970. He said, "Oh, I hope you and your wife will go see my play again as a guest. It's so much better than it was on opening night." Like, oh, well, great.
Why'd you invite us?
I feel like he was either guilty or frustrated or something about how it was not right when it went up.
Sure.
You know? So yeah.
Well, what do you give it?
I think I would give it like a B minus.
Yeah, I'd go solid B.
Yeah.
'Cause I think he's wrong. I think his perception is being colored by like how hard it was to mount. Yeah. But pound for pound, it's got so many Kurt blurts that just makes it good.
Yeah, that's the part that really sings, and it's also tackling masculinity and in a way that he doesn't quite hit so head on in much of his other stuff. So it's a perspective on his philosophy that you don't really get from his other novels.
Yeah.
The plotting is fine and clearly based on what it's adapting with the Odyssey, adapting to an extent. And
Although it's a little clunky. Like,
Yeah,
structurally, I agree with him that's why it's not an A. Like,
Yeah.
because the Wanda June interludes are interesting and make points, but it never becomes fully clear that they needed to be there in that structure.
Yeah.
They're just interesting interludes. And the structure is very, very, very simple.
Yeah.
So it's the dialogue that gets you, for sure.
Yeah, and it's a simple structure, and like I said, I don't think he's super effectively satirical of horrible men all the time. I think sometimes you're just seeing a horrible man being horrible. Like a B- might be a little. I might go down to C+, B-, but like it's there's a lot to recommend it in spite of it not being.
Well, if you go
perfect.
down, I'm going up to a B+ to keep the average the same, so
Oh.
it doesn't matter.
But D is way too hard on himself.
Definitely.
It's a functional thing with a lot of neat moments.
I find Ds are usually way too hard, in my experience.
I am walking into pun after pun.
It's true.
I'm like the stepping on rakes of puns today. They're just all happening.
I practiced that for
I was gonna
hours
say,
as a child.
I
I
figured-
can perfectly mimic it.
I should have guessed that you would have it down.
Fun fact we learned in the Cracked podcast where we got to interview some of the Simpsons writers, they fucking hate that bit. Or at least
Yeah, that's
Mike
crazy
Reese
to
does,
me.
because they felt totally similar to how Kurt doesn't like this just because he knows that it wasn't the decision he wanted. They felt compelled to put it in because an episode came up 60 seconds short.
Yeah.
And someone's like, well, there's that scene where he steps on a rake. Could you loop the animation, have him step on 15 rakes so it does that thing where it gets funny and then not funny and funny again? And they're like, I guess
Right.
we can just fill our episode with filler if we're giving up. And then everyone I know, that's like in their top 10 bits of all time.
Yeah, it's an all-time
For sure, yeah.
in one of the all-time episodes.
It's
like
great.
it was the best thing.
So you never know, Kurt. People like Wanda June. Sorry.
Yeah. Screw your grades.
Yeah.
On we go to another segment, which is a slight variation on one we often do. It's called Drama Time. I'm talking to a skull on a stage.
He was
skull.
my son.
A skull was your son. We usually do movie time with a book because we're like thinking straight to movies. How do we do it?
Part of my brain did freak the fuck out because I was like, drama time? I who don't know what that segment is.
Yeah. Oh, good.
It's like movie time.
It's like movie time.
Oh, okay.
And actually, this play was made into a movie like right away after it was done. When it was, I believe, 1971. It was starring Rod Steiger and Susanna York and a lot of known people. I could not find this movie anywhere in any format, so I have not seen it. And I assume you haven't either, because it's probably not readily available.
Nope.
And it was also critically panned, did poorly commercially, and Kurt tried to get his name taken off of it.
Will not be in the footnotes, obviously.
So
Hey, if you find it somehow,
Don't
feel free
look for
to
it.
send it to us.
Yeah.
I'm interested in watching it to see how bad it is and why.
yeah, I would absolutely watch it, but it seems to be not very available. And also, there's in Palm Sunday, Kurt talks about trying to get his name taken off it, and he said, "This proved impossible, however. I alone had done the thing the credits said I had done. I had really written the thing." Which is a great
Oh, it sucked
self-burn.
to watch a shitty movie and the credit goes by and you have sole writer credit and you're like, well, but no,
But
I don't know who, but someone else wrote. I didn't do it.
Who even?
Yeah.
Right. And he's probably right. They probably didn't even change it much. Like, they probably just
Sure,
did what
yeah.
he said, you know? But so anyway, so the movie probably doesn't recommend itself very well. But we're fun people, so we've thought about...
Are we?
I say yes.
Yeah.
You're wearing a great hat today. People
Great,
can't see
thank
it. That's
you.
really cool. But anyway, I thought it'd be fun to think about, like, what would be a better cast for this. And also if there are other Kurt pieces that would be good plays. You know,
Yeah.
like what should be on a stage, which we've talked about a little bit before, especially with the short stories. But...
Well, I did cast it, but I did cast it, I'm realizing now, as a film. Meaning,
Oh,
I mean, a lot of these people have some roots in theater. But you know what I didn't do?
I think it works.
As
it works either
Dr.
way.
Woodley, I want Tony Award-winning actor, blah, blah, blah. Like,
It can be
yeah.
be movie time.
Yeah,
casting,
yeah, yeah.
That's fine.
It's going to be famous people that the
Yeah.
people know.
Yeah, let's do
Who's
let's do
starting?
the cast stuff.
Okay,
My
you say the
casting
character,
is-
and then we'll both cast. How about that? But
Yeah.
you go through the character list.
Well, my casting is sort of minimal. I'm super focused on Penelope. I think that's like the key role. That's the one
Right.
you gotta do right. And I think I would pick Jessica Chastain. I think she's a really fantastic actress all of the time. And I think she can do like hurt and wounded in a dramatic kind of thing. And she was in, they made a movie of Coriolanus she's in.
Yeah. I've seen that actually. Yeah. It's good.
Yeah. So she can do full-on theater and nail it.
Totally. I'm on a kick that I think a lot of people are on right now, but I'd go Janelle Monáe.
She's awesome.
More for Moonlight than for Hidden Figures, but
yeah,
I just think, especially in Moonlight, which was certainly my favorite film last year, she arguably one of the few, if there are any flaws. I don't really count it as a flaw because every film has to focus on certain aspects and therefore ignore other aspects of life. But one of the flaws was, as we're talking about today, her character is fleshed out, but could have been even more fleshed out, but there's only so much time to spend on a movie and blah, 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 blah. The point being that I think a lot of what came out of that character came from Janelle Monáe putting it into the performance.
Yeah.
More so than, I mean, the script is obviously friggin' phenomenal, but her character of all the characters in the movie had to get the most across in the least amount of time, and she did that. And I think Penelope has the same challenge. Because the play is as good as Penelope can be sophisticated, and she doesn't have the lines to do the work for her. It has to be her performance.
Yeah. Really rarely does she have the text help her. It's like
he gives her a couple hammer blows in the final scene, but before that, she's kind of just like, I'm just thinking about this. I'm not going to say what I think yet. I'm just thinking.
Yeah. Let's do Harold next. Who would you have for Harold? You go first.
Who played Maude in Harold and Maude? Been waiting for that joke to come up. So, obviously, Nick Offerman or his evil. I actually don't think he has the range personally.
I don't think he'd quite fit. I think
But mainly because he looks like the guy in the pictures in my book. But like his evil twin, Dick Offelman, I think could do it.
Dick Offelman.
All right, that was my only pre-planned pun of the evening is now dispensed. So my actual decisions, I'm gonna shotgun blast you with 4 and not explain them because I think they're self-evident.
Sure.
And then I'm sure you were able to actually make your mind up. But I could go with any of the above. Jeff Bridges, now that he's old Jeff Bridges.
Okay, yeah.
True Grit Jeff Bridges. Ian McShane, the aforementioned Al Swearingen. Kathy Bates, I think would be the interesting cross-casting because, man, she can be as forceful and bloodthirsty as you need her to be,
that's a
obviously.
really cool idea.
And has done it time and again.
Yeah.
And then I realized I only picked this person because thinking of Kathy Bates made me remember her turn on The Office, which in turn made me remember the other person who is meant to be an arrogant prick in this life, James Spader.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And I also love James Spader because he plays pompous, arrogant pricks, but he's a short, fat, bald guy. I think that would be doubly cool for Harold to be a dude with an obvious hairpiece who comes in and is not that tall, but is bossing everyone around and murdering everyone.
That's kind of like mine. I would pick Michael Gambon.
Refresh me.
He plays Dumbledore after Richard Harris, and he's in
really.
He does a lot of theater. I saw him in a play in London, and he was amazing. Okay. He was in a Pinter play where he was really scary despite being a schlubby-ish kind of guy.
Okay, because I was gonna ask, do you feel like he's too old to be? You're scared he's gonna murder his wife on stage?
I sort of want him to be too old.
Oh, really?
So
you
it's
think
an
that's
even
part
grosser
of it?
Harold.
Because, he is the aging soldier. He's not the soldier in his prime, for sure.
Yeah.
That's
a good falling apart jerk. Yeah.
Totally.
That'd be fun. Also, Loose Leaf, I think I would like to be John Hawkes, because I cast John Hawkes as all Vonnegut stand-ins.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
And I think he'd fit the look and be a good kind of that character.
I was going with Loose Leaf, not as Vonnegut, or because I didn't make that connection until you brought it up, but as just who's the best moronic dope guy who seems like a cute puppy dog who follows you around even though you kick him. So I ended up on Will Ferrell or Patrick Stewart.
Oh.
Okay, that's a real weird pick. And again, I think I'm being influenced by, because I just did Green Room and Logan. And so I'm in a phase where I'm like, well, Patrick Stewart can do anything. Literally anything.
Right, he kicks ass. Yeah.
So just for range. But I think Will Ferrell's the safer bet. Will Ferrell is what I was imagining when I was reading. That type of energy. Yeah. I thought Loose Leaf was a really dull buzz. Like Will Ferrell can be, where he's just
yeah, you could do that.
I don't know. I dropped the bomb. That's how I was envisioning him.
Yeah, I buy that. Yeah. For the rest of the people, I only had one other strong thought, which is the actress Diane Wiest was in.
She was the understudy.
Yeah, so in the actual production of this in 1970 and 1971, she was the female understudy. She was 22. her name is misspelled in my copy of it because she was that like unknown. And she went on to win a couple Oscars and Emmys and be an amazing actress. So she should get some kind of great quick role. And I thought Mildred would be a good
like just because she's earned it? Yeah.
Yeah. Like bring her back like, oh, can you believe it? From all this time. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think we were going to mention it, but since we're mentioning the Weast, or as it says in my book, Diddy West, I just want to recommend the sketch-driven movie The 10, based on the 10 Commandments, featuring Diane Wiest as herself in one of the funniest movies.
Oh, just herself?
Yeah, Diane Wiest plays herself. Paul Rudd is having a relationship with Diane Wiest. And Paul Rudd's not himself. Paul Rudd's a character.
Yeah.
It's very confusing. It's a movie that is...
What a funny touchstone to choose of like a real celebrity. Yeah. It's Diane Wiest.
It's incredible. It's a segmentized movie from most of the team that did Wet Hot American Summer. If you haven't heard of it, that has 10 sketches and an 11th like framing device. And they wrote it in a weekend. Like the writers each wrote one segment over a weekend and just made the movie. And somehow it's one of my all-time funniest movies of all time. For me.
That's
I
cool.
love it.
Yeah.
And it's got Wiest. It has a song about breaking up with Diane Wiest. I had to break it off with Wiest.
And the rest of the cast, there's a lot of kids and a Nazi and suitors, so I didn't worry about it too much.
Oh, I have some, but I will say under Wanda June, I wrote some cute kid who gives a shit. Like there's always some cute little girl that Hollywood finds. I don't know.
Like whenever I try to do this with like a kid role, I literally think of just the most recent kid I saw in the thing.
You're always like, shit.
I don't know, Asa Butterfield,
Dakota Fanning, and like, what's his name are too old now. So yeah, Haley Joel and Dakota are too old. Who's the kid now? I don't keep track of who's the kids.
Only actual casting directors know this. I don't know.
Although for Paul, the little boy, I thought maybe Ashton Sanders from a couple years ago. That's the guy that played Chiron in the middle section of Moonlight.
Yeah. I really like your like very minority and female driven cast of this. That's very fun.
I didn't even mean to when I was thinking about it because like I said, I try to cast based on the actor's energy. But if you do make Penelope African American and their son mixed race, I guess, because she's with Harold.
Yeah.
It adds a bunch of interesting layers that make everything even worse. I don't know if you want to do that, but...
Right. Yeah.
But I was just thinking actor's energy in Moonlight, man. I mean, again, he gets so much out with so little dialogue. In the middle section is where he says the least, I think, of any of the three sections. So, Ashton Sanders. And then for Woodley, I got Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yes. You can't come in here and just kill everything. We're going to get you out of here, Mr. Harold. Yeah.
It's almost there's a Western called The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance.
That's my recommended reading. Don't jump to it.
It's
or do. It's fine.
I don't know. It's the Stewart. That Stewart would be.
That's exactly why I cast him in this.
So. Dang it.
You can explain why, or I'll explain why.
How did we both
get
wavelength that movie? That's amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Königswald Christoph Waltz, because it's a gimme.
Yeah, right. It's the German.
Best Nazi.
Who's the last German I
there?
saw? Like, which Inglourious Bastards character will I?
And the reason I'm dragging the segment out is I do think I have one more that will make you go, ooh. And that's Shuttle.
Shuttle, yeah.
The vacuum cleaner salesman who himself is sad and broken inside, but basically is in love with Harold, right?
Right.
Ben Foster.
Oh. From Hell or High Water?
Hell or High Water, although I was thinking more of his role in 3:10 to Yuma, where he clearly evinced with no lines about it that he's in love with Russell Crowe. And then I also just saw him in one of his very early roles where he has an arc on 6 Feet Under. He dates Claire. And again, it's this role where he says, I'm gay, but you can tell from fucking second one that he is in love with her, only by the way he looks at her. And I just think that's an amazing thing for like, any actor, I've seen him nail that over and over, and I want to see Shuttle up on stage when Harold's back is turned, looking at him like, oh shit, he's in love with that dude. Like, I want that dichotomy.
That would make it way more interesting.
That'd be cool, yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of related readings, let's get into the segment for related reading.
Okay, well, I had 3, but now I have 2.
Reading.
Reading/watching/listening.
Yeah. Talk about The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance.
Okay. There's a movie called The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. If you're a Western buff, you've of course seen it, but a lot of people aren't, and a lot of people don't take the time to watch old movies because a lot of them have become dated and boring. I get that. I see old movies where I go, this has no relevance to anything, and they didn't figure out how editing works yet, so it's fucking boring.
Yeah, and the pace is slow. Yeah,
it's always a joy to realize that some old movies still fucking rule and like are just as good, even all the way back to the black and white era. You just need someone to tell you which ones are going to hold up. And The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance totally holds up. Incredible Western, made sort of in the afternoon. They weren't super old, but in the afternoons of Jimmy Stewart's and John Wayne's careers.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say who plays the Man Who Shot Liberty Valance because that's the twist.
Right.
But the setup is basically Wanda June. I mean, the moral thematic setup.
Yeah.
And I don't have to tell you this, Alex, because you keyed into that, obviously. But
yeah, it's about what kind of a man to be.
It's about what kind of a man to be.
Stewart and Wayne are arguing for.
And it's about both. It's the idea that, of course, the Wild West did need the John Wayne type of cowboy.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, need is a relative term, but regardless, the Wild West town that comes into existence would not exist in this form without John Wayne, who ran the Indians off their land and shot any criminals that came around. Yep, you're right. Now that the town exists, no one wants you here. Jimmy Stewart comes in and is a lawyer who's bringing the first court system to the town, and everyone wants that. They want to be a real town. And it's the whole idea. I mentioned an Ellison story that's about this too, but it's one of my favorite themes. Where does a soldier go when we don't need soldiers anymore? Because the whole goal of being a soldier is to make everything so safe that you don't need soldiers anymore.
Right.
Well, then everyone hates you because you're like gross because you killed a bunch of things, which we no longer understand how to do and we think it's weird.
Or we regret that our life now needed some of that, and so we like hate you reminding us of it.
Right. You're the guy we paid to kill all the Native Americans. Now we feel guilty that we killed them all. We blame you. It's weird to be that guy who was like, but 50 years ago, you were all cheering me for doing this.
Right.
Also, you might feel guilty, but it's objectively true that your town wouldn't exist if I didn't do that. So he's Harold. He's Harold Ryan. Yeah. And Jimmy Stewart is Dr. Woodley, who says, no, we're going to use courts and make peace now, and you need to leave. And they fight over a woman who represents, I guess, whoever wins the woman was right about the argument, I guess. Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
because it's still a movie from the 60s.
Yeah,
so,
Yeah.
So there's a prize woman, and you're seeing is the prize woman, is the Penelope going to be won by the gun or by the book of law?
Yeah.
It's good.
It's great. Yeah.
And the ending rips your heart out. The ending's fucking great.
I'll do a movie one. It's sort of a pair. One of them is the movie Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Coen Brothers movie. You probably know it. And it's about the Odyssey. And then there's also a movie called Sullivan's Travels, which is by Preston Sturges from the early 40s.
Also in my top 10 movies of all time.
Right. And it's also sort of a take on the Odyssey, but very, very funny about it and very backward about it a lot of the time. It just trivia, or if you're interested in Sullivan's Travels, the main character keeps trying to make a movie out of a gripping novel about the Great Depression called Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?, which is where the Coen brothers got the title of that movie.
And Preston Sturges, the writer-director, wrote that movie about the difficulty he was having writing a different screenplay.
Yeah.
It escapes me, but he had an assigned project, and he was sick of being pigeonholed as a writer of light comedies. So the movie's about a director who doesn't want to be pigeonholed as a writer of light comedies and tries to make a serious movie, but doesn't know what he has to say that is meaningful or real.
Yeah.
It's very funny.
And it's great.
Talk about freaking movies holding up, dude. Palm Beach Story, also a Preston Sturges, still as funny. Okay, like you could watch The Hangover, which is not the best comedy of all time, but is very strong. Yeah. And then watch Palm Beach Story back to back and be like, I just saw two great comedies that made me laugh all the way through the whole time. And they're both
from so long ago.
They're both black and white movies from like the 30s to the 50s. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Preston Sturges has two movies in my top 10.
Oh, that's
and
great.
They're both black and white, and that makes me classy and smart.
And correct.
Yeah, Palm Beach Story is also good. I have no related reading. Oh, I do. I have reading, but you should see it if you can. But if you can't see it, I suggest you'd read the play, The Last Living Black Man in the Whole Entire World by Susan Laurie Parks.
Cool title.
Yeah, she writes incredible avant-garde, semi-abstract theater pieces that are, I think she also, I might be butchering the name, but she wrote another play I really love called The Death of Abraham Lincoln. In the footnotes, it will be linked to with the proper name. Yeah. But regardless, Susan Laurie Parks writes some of the most exciting theater coming out right now. So if, she's alive and writing. So if you love theater, but you've only read Arthur Miller and Pinter and blah, 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 and you're like, who's like writing plays? Like what plays happen now? She does. And she's both written classic plays that have been around forever, but she's writing new plays that are fucking amazing too. So read anything by Susan Laurie Parks. I especially recommend The Last Living Black Man in the Whole Entire World. I didn't mean to say like Don Pardo announcing
The
the cast of
world.
SNL, but yeah.
Counting crows.
Yeah.
No, that's great. I guess because I have a theater recommendation too. And this is overall check out neo-futurist theater. There's
The
specific...
movement? Is that a movement or a group, a theater group?
It's kind of both. It's somewhat named after the futurist movement, who were like Italian fascists, basically, in the 1920s. That's a very reductive way to put it. But the neo-futurists are a group that started in Chicago, and then there's a branch in New York and a new branch in San Francisco. And the ensembles there are actor, writer, director, performers who write plays where they are themselves being themselves, doing what they're doing in the actual room. And their main show is 30 plays in 60 minutes is the idea. So a play is a page, or it's a little short thing,
yeah.
or and it can be movement, comedy, drama, whatever it is. And it's a rapid fire, incredible experience as theater. You pretty much have to go see it in person if you want to see it. And it's only in those places. Sometimes they tour, but look up neo-futurists in a city near you. They're amazing.
I think our friends 5 Second Films might have a lawsuit on their hands. 5 Second Plays. I got a final one, which is this time recommended listening.
Ooh. Ooh.
A song by my favorite lyricist of all time that has lyrics that very much tie into... It's a story song that's very much similar to Wanda June. So it's a good excuse for me to mention it.
Yeah.
Cat Eye Willie Come to Claim His Lover is the name of the song.
Huh.
The group is Dave Carter and Tracy Grammer, who are among my favorite artists, but I'm only recommending this one song. Brett, can we play a clip?
Bonnie Brown, you can run and hide, fly my honey lamb. You can cry, have mercy, and crawl the cane for cover. Butcher man for butcher's pride, sloop the devil won't be denied when Cat Eye Willie come to claim his lover.
That's a great clip.
Oh, what a clip.
So it's a story about a dude who impregnates a woman, and then she realizes he's violent and abusive, so she tries to keep his kid, so he decides to kill her and get the kid back, and it's good.
Whoa.
Classic, like, hardcore Western
Like
story where
hardcore
everything
Western.
goes to shit, yeah.
And they're a songwriting duo or something? Or is it...
Dave Carter wrote all the songs, and then Tracy Grammer is incredibly talented singer and fiddle player.
Oh, cool.
So it's folk music. And she does all the violin and fiddle pieces and sings. They switch off singing. He also sings, but I'm pretty sure he wrote all the lyrics and songs on those albums.
Cool. And from that clip, it was so good.
Yeah, odds are you've never heard of them, and they're great. So listen up.
And then my last one is a Ray Bradbury short story. Yep, it's me. We're doing it.
Holy shit, you vanquished me. I didn't bring a Harlan Ellison story this time.
Oh, well, that's okay.
I can't believe I didn't think to do that.
I didn't mean to ace you out or
No,
nothing,
you did. You won the podcast. That was it.
There's
I'm leaving.
Confetti descending from the ceiling. And it's a small room.
Michael's
we shouldn't do
melting
this.
into a puddle of water.
It's a slam dunky one, and it's called The Kilimanjaro Device. It was originally written for Life magazine and then published in I Sing the Body Electric, and it is about a man going back in time to Idaho to try to give Ernest Hemingway a better end to his life. And in Life magazine's version, Ray Bradbury did a little intro to the story, and he talks about the genesis of it, and he met somebody who knew Hemingway in life when he was living in Idaho and really fallen apart, and he describes him as that old man, that sad old man on the road kind of thing, and just like heartbreaking mental picture of Hemingway just wandering around wanting to die.
Right, yeah.
And so it's a story about kind of reckoning with his legacy and trying to appreciate him and understand him and figure out a better way to handle him. Because also, I mean, I feel like an implied related reading for this thing is read Ernest Hemingway.
Sure.
But also that's sort of an interesting take on him
Yeah.
too. And sort of the reverse of damning the bad part of him to be like, oh, if only we could save the good bit, you know?
Right.
Or at least just give a
some
human
good
being
shit. There's good stuff in there, right?
Yeah.
And it nominally, even though in Wanda June highlights how, he lived a violent life, or he said things that seem like he promotes violence. But I mean, A Farewell to Arms is literally about saying farewell to the need for guns, and For Whom the Bell Tolls is literally about how anytime another human being suffers, you suffer too, because we're all connected. So Hemingway was not Harold Ryan, really.
Right. Just part of him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to his credit, Vonnegut says, like,
And
Yeah,
Vonnegut says so.
this
yeah.
character is a blown-up version of a type of man that I think is best evinced by a part of Ernest Hemingway's public
Right.
persona. That's very far from saying I wrote this to shit on Ernest Hemingway's work or something.
Right, yeah. But those are the readings. I think we're going toward the end here. We can get into a segment called Vonnegut News.
And you could blast through those because you could like have Liberty Valance on the TV while you're playing a song,
yeah.
flipping through the book. It's our
Have all
easiest
that-
one yet.
Have all that playing inside a neo-futurist show. They will love it.
Your kid
will
comes
be
up with
not at all
a
bad.
wadded up ball of bread, and everything is tied together nicely.
Merry Christmas. This Vonnegut News here. It's a pretty short one, this episode. There is one story out of the great state of Illinois. Oh, 1818 saw your founding. You're the best. There's a song we had to learn. There's a federal judge in Illinois who wrote a decision in a case about injunctions and jury trials and patent infringement and some things that I haven't really looked into closely. But the decision was heavily filled with Vonnegut references.
Weird.
So if you look on natlawreview.com and search Illinois Vonnegut, you will turn up this decision where he adds an epilogue to his decision, and it says, like, life is not over, but the story is. Vonnegut, Dead-Eyed Dick, 1982. Still, the fear is that, like Kilgore Trout in Breakfast of Champions, we are trapped in the middle of some work of fiction, but unlike Kilgore, we are not close to the end, actually. So it goes. This is an actual federal judge. This is a judicial decision.
So the headline of this news story is "Federal Judge Bored Out of Mind."
Probably. Yeah. The story calls it a Kurt Vonnegut fueled opinion.
Federal judge left phone charger at home today. Needed something to do.
Yeah. So that's going on in my home state. Keep it up. And then also, if you're in Los Angeles, a theater group called Sacred Fools. We've said this before, but they're putting on a play version of The Sirens of Titan. It starts March 31st, runs through May 6th.
We're coming up on that.
So yeah,
We'll definitely
Michael
go
and
to
I
that,
are going to
I'm
go
sure.
see it and have a good time.
We got to get to a movie one because I still want to do like a "How did this get made" style where we when you first said that, I was like, oh, we'll do a live episode where we talk about the whole time we're watching it. You can't do that at a play.
No.
That's not going to work out.
Well,
we sit in the back talking into a microphone very quietly about how the play is going. I don't think it'll work.
Well, that is, as we're concluding here, I guess we're spitballing this idea live, but as we're concluding here, our next episode is going to be about the novel Breakfast of Champions, which is a huge Kurt book and also was made into a movie starring Bruce Willis.
So famously, I think
that might be a way to do it.
one of the few movies we'll hit that you will actually have seen, maybe, or at least you're like, well, I know Bruce Willis. It's not obscure. It is famous. It did famously bomb and isn't supposed to be good. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, well,
but,
I've
I'm
pretty studiously avoided Vonnegut movies and shows before we were making this, so they're all new to me, and I'm excited to see it.
If it's bad enough, I could imagine us doing a bonus episode where we just mock Breakfast of Champions while we watch it.
Yeah,
Maybe.
some kind of thing.
But I haven't seen it, so again, maybe I'll watch it and I'll be like, it was bad, like boring, but not bad enough to be funny bad, you know?
right.
We'll see. We shall see.
Yeah. And we'll find that out in our next one, Breakfast of Champions from 1973.
Oh, that's a real cliffhanger. That'll
And,
keep them. Was that 12-year-old movie bad or really bad? When will we find out?
I'm great with those. I'm a regular Shyamalan. Oh, no, he's Twist, right?
Yeah, that's the opposite.
I'm a
He leaves you with a
regular-
conclusive story beat that means you never have to see anymore.
I'm a regular Charles Dickens? I
Sure.
don't know what I'm doing.
You're a regular Marvel post-credit
I don't
sequence.
know what I'm
Let's
doing.
say that.
Okay. Thank you guys for hanging out with us and enjoying the plays of Kurt Vonnegut.
Jim Gaffigan is funny. I agree.